What the heck are you doing? What's this all of a sudden? It's not what? You're useless. My mother-in-law said this and then threw my phone that was in front of me. It was a perfect throw, hitting me on the forehead, and I crouched down. What did I do to deserve this? I glared back at my mother-in-law. She didn't like that one bit and kicked me even harder. You're such an impudent woman. What's your problem with me? Just then, my sister-in-law arrived. Don't you get it? You should be grateful just to be allowed to stay in this house. Get up now. She then pulled my hair and forced me to stand. Stop it, please. Don't make a scene. Come on, help me out here. Leave it to me. I couldn't understand why this was happening. Get started on dinner now. And if it's bad again, you'll hear from me. Since coming to my in-laws, I've been doing all the household chores alone. No one's going to help you. That's right. You're all alone in this world. They both started laughing in a creepy way. Maybe they're right, maybe I am all alone. Right before getting married, both my parents died in an accident. Furthermore, the original purpose of living together, my father-in-law, had also passed away. Maybe that's when my heart died. I'm home. What are you doing? You came back at just the right time. I was just teaching this woman her place in this house. Why don't you say something too? I'm tired. My husband didn't offer any help or even a word, he just hurried off to his room. This is the harsh reality of my home. Even my husband, who I hoped would be my ally, was just like this. I couldn't take it anymore. So, I planned to trap these three. I worked tirelessly from that point on. No matter how much my in-laws tormented me, I endured it. I finally made it here. I bought a house near a downtown station. And it was quite a bargain for its location, looking very neat from the outside. Of course, I intended to keep it a secret from my in-laws, but it seems they found out anyway. I can't believe you bought such a nice house without us knowing. You knew about it. Of course, I know what you're capable of. That's why I didn't want to say anything. Still, to find such a nice house within 10 minutes from the station. Yeah, it looks like this will be our house from now on. Huh? What are you surprised about? What's yours is also your husband's. Well, I might even let you live with us. Then maybe you should sleep outside. That's like treating her like a dog. Oh? I always thought of her as a talking dog. What's so funny about that? What if I refuse? That won't happen, but well, it would mean divorce, I suppose. Okay. That's a smart decision. But I won't just quietly comply. Right. This house is in your name, isn't it? Yes, but I'll change the ownership to me. No complaints allowed. I've been thinking of doing that since we decided to live together. But I have a condition too. A condition? Yes. Since we're going to live here, you don't need your old family home anymore, do you? I want it transferred to my name. Oh, that's fine. My husband asked for agreement from my mother-in-law. Since that old house is just that old, it's fine. Really? Okay. Because we have this house now. That's true. These three don't understand anything. This is all part of my plan. So, I'll give you the keys on moving day. Yeah, please do. I can't wait to live here. Right? In the meantime, we changed the ownership of each other's properties. My plan is nearing its climax. And a month later, the moving day arrived. I had handed the keys over to my husband. What's the meaning of this? My mother-in-law called in a frenzy. What's the matter? Why are you so flustered? You tricked us. Finally realized, huh? It's too late. But you were the ones who said you wanted to live in that house. Huh? How are we supposed to live in this house? That's for you to figure out. Don't joke with me. That's your home now. You did this on purpose, didn't you? Well, maybe. Anyway, good luck. I hung up the phone and headed somewhere. This operation couldn't have been done by me alone. And there's still some finishing to do. My name is Lena, and I worked as a nurse at a hospital. Having admired my mother who was a nurse, I've aspired to this profession since I was little. When I was 28, I was assigned to my current husband, Ethan, as his nurse. Lena, do you have a boyfriend? That topic again? I'm just curious. I don't. I see. Ethan had fractured his right leg in a motorcycle accident. It was a serious injury that would take 2 months to heal completely. He got along well with the other patients in his room. Thanks to Ethan's cheerful personality, what was once a gloomy hospital room is now almost too noisy. Then, a week before his discharge. Lena, I have a request. Yes, what is it? How do I say this? Normally straightforward, today he seemed restless and uneasy. Are you feeling unwell? No, it's not that. Then Ethan took a deep breath. Would you go on a date with me sometime? Really? Is that a no? I hesitated. I've been approached like this before, but honestly, none were really my type. There had been persistent ones, and I had gone on a date just once. Sure, he's a nice guy, but if it doesn't work out, I'll give up. Please. His earnestness caught me off guard, and I found myself agreeing. 2 weeks after Ethan was discharged, we went on a date. Initially, it was supposed to be just once, but before I knew it, it turned into 2, then 3 times. About a year later, Ethan formally confessed his feelings. By then, I had fallen for him, so I accepted his confession. Looking forward to our future together. Me too. Our relationship smoothly progressed, and a year passed. Then, on my 30th birthday, he proposed. I accepted Ethan's proposal, moved by his passion. After greeting my parents, we went to Ethan's family home. This was the beginning of everything. Or maybe it was all set when I accepted the proposal. You must be Lena. Ethan has really brought home someone wonderful, hasn't he? That's true. She's almost too good for Ethan. No, I'm not that. His mother's first impression was of a very calm and kind person. His father appeared stern but showed a deep conviction behind it. Ethan had a sister, but she wasn't there at that time. Thus accepted by my in-laws, I believed I would surely have a happy married life. However, that belief would soon crumble after starting our married life. We rented a place about halfway between our parents' homes. Having never lived together, I was internally nervous. It seemed Ethan felt the same, and the first week we were both cautious. But after a month, we were living worry-free. I was unsure at first. Me too. But now it's incredibly fun. Yeah. Just 3 months after we started living together. I had just returned from a night shift and was about to take a shower and nap when my phone rang. It was from the hospital where I work. Hello. The call was unbelievable. I'll be there immediately. I quickly changed and left the house. By the time I arrived at the hospital, the procedures were already done, and I was led to a separate room. I had been here many times before. It's the last room I wanted to enter. Why has this happened? There lay my parents, no longer moving. I collapsed to my knees. They had died. A drunk driver had crashed into them. And by the time I reached the hospital, the situation was dire. Ethan also arrived soon after hearing the situation. Lena! No way! At that moment, I was too confused to think straight. Ethan gently embraced me, helping me regain my sanity. Are you feeling better? Yeah, thanks. I never thought this would happen. If my parents were alive, we would have been planning to have the ceremony next month. Being an only child, my parents were really looking forward to it. Now I won't be able to show them my wedding dress. Every time I realize my parents are gone, I can't stop crying. But I didn't have time to grieve slowly. I'll help too. Thank you. So just let me know whatever you need. Preparations for my parents' funeral started immediately. With Ethan's help, we were able to conduct the funeral without any problems. And my mother-in-law was really worried about me. It's such a shame about your parents. Yes. And that's when I met Ethan's sister, Mia, for the first time. Like my mother-in-law, she was concerned, which almost made me cry again. I felt ashamed for thinking I had no family left. Just one thing bothered me. By the way, where's your father? The atmosphere suddenly tensed up. Did I say something wrong? Then my mother-in-law quickly smiled. He's not feeling well, I'm sorry. I see. At that time, I didn't realize how bad the situation around my father-in-law was. After the funeral, thanks to Ethan and his family, I was able to live comfortably. Losing my parents had a big impact, but I couldn't stay weak forever. My parents would have been upset seeing me like that. A year passed, and I was living my days no different from before. Can we talk? Is that okay? Yeah, what's up? Actually, my dad's not doing well. He went to the hospital, and it turns out his liver is in bad shape. So it's hard to say, but I was hoping you could take care of him. Do you mean like care for him? Sort of. Yes, that's what it would be. It's not immediate, but we're thinking of moving in together. Moving in? Yeah, it's just him, and you're a nurse, right? It'd be reassuring if something happened. Is that okay? Honestly, I didn't feel indebted to my father-in-law. But I owed a lot to my mother-in-law and Mia, who supported me when my parents died. My answer was decided. All right. I can do it. But I have my job, so I can't be there all the time. That's more than enough. Thank you. Everything happened quickly after that. We started preparing to move immediately, and I soon terminated the lease on the room I had been living in. A week after deciding to move in, I started living at my in-laws' house. Fortunately, the distance to the hospital where I work didn't change. Once we moved in, I mainly took care of my father-in-law. Lena, you're really putting yourself out. Not at all. This was my decision. I appreciate it. At first, my mother-in-law and Mia were happy I came, but their behavior changed within a few days. Usually, my father-in-law stayed in his room, but they hardly checked on him or acted as if he was a nuisance. I realized this one night. So, what will happen to Dad? Well, he won't last long. He's ignorant about diseases. That's why you've been feeding him bad stuff for years, haven't you? That finally paid off. Glad she came. Now we don't have to see his face. Right. They were probably talking about me. But I couldn't understand why they hated my father-in-law so much. I quietly returned to my bedroom, trying not to be noticed. I debated whether to tell Ethan. As I was about to wake him up, I hesitated. What if Ethan is also in on it? That would be an even bigger problem. I decided not to tell Ethan. As I was figuring out what to do, the day came. My father-in-law collapsed at home, and I called an ambulance. I was alone at home, so I rode in the ambulance with him. On the way to the hospital, his breathing weakened, and by the time we arrived, his heart had stopped. I immediately called Ethan. I see. Sorry, but I can't leave work right now. Work? Sorry, I'm hanging up. How could he remain so calm? I also contacted my mother-in-law and Mia, but like Ethan, they did not come to the hospital. My father-in-law's death marked the beginning of the worst environment around me. The kind mother-in-law I knew was gone. She was like a completely different person. Now that he's gone, you'll follow my instructions. Mom, don't forget about me too, okay? I know. She was so different, it was hard to keep up. It seems that what I heard that night was true. They had wanted him dead. You look confused. Should I explain? That's when my mother-in-law started to tell me about the past. It turns out my father-in-law was very abusive when he was younger. Initially, my mother-in-law was the target, but eventually, my sister-in-law became a target too, which raises new questions about Ethan. By the way, Ethan saw everything we went through, and he eventually started to hate him too. Mom, enough about him. It's our time now. I'll take out my unresolved feelings on you. At that moment, I realized I was just a substitute for my father-in-law. They were taking out all their frustrations on me. I thought it was dangerous to continue this way and sought Ethan's help, but thanks. It was a short time, but I'm sure Dad is happy in the afterlife. In hell. Even Ethan couldn't be relied upon. Now I truly felt completely isolated. Get on with the cleaning already. You're such a dawdler. My mother-in-law didn't care that I was just back from a night shift. Exhausted, I cleaned the entire house. Moreover, the family home was falling apart, needing repairs everywhere. If there was a leak, I climbed into the attic to patch it up so no water would come through. But being an amateur, it would leak again. Each time, I was the one who dealt with it. Of course, I had suggested hiring a professional. But all those suggestions turned to ash. If this life continued, I would have no time to think. Unless I was sleeping, I was always doing something. It had been 6 months since my father-in-law died. Hey! Did you do the housework? I was supposed to answer, but I was so out of it I didn't know what to say. I just passed out. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. You finally woke up. The doctor says it's probably from overwork. I was really worried. I thought maybe they'd have some remorse after I collapsed. But the next moment, I realized people don't change that easily. It's good it was just overwork. Otherwise, who would clean the house? Right. And who would cook for us? You've rested enough. Let's go home now. Hey! Eventually, my in-laws forcibly took me from the hospital back to their home. This shouldn't be allowed. And my anger towards my in-laws was reaching its limit. Even if I collapsed, nothing would change in my life. Since there was no rest at home, I deliberately started coming home late. Instead of taking the train from the usual station, I decided to walk a bit. And that's when a significant change in my fate occurred. After walking past 2 stations, just as I was about to head to the station. What's this? I found a house for sale, not far from the station. It looked very neat, almost like it was newly built. While I was looking at the house, a woman in her 50s approached me. You should stay away from that house. What do you mean? The thing about that house is... I was more intrigued than shocked by her story. At the gate of the house, there was a real estate sign with an address and phone number, which I quickly noted. I remembered we had talked about moving since the family home was old. This could be useful. Later, I went to the real estate agent I had noted. And there I had another fateful encounter. Wait, you work here? It was Logan, a friend from college. Lena! What brings you here? Well, I was interested in a property. Leave it to me. So, I told Logan about the house. His expression clouded. That house is... It's okay. I already heard about it from a neighbor. Oh, you did? I'll get straight to the point. How much is it? Huh? How much are they selling that house for? Wait a sec. It's quite a bargain right now, maybe $400,000. $400,000. But maybe I could manage the mortgage. As I was thinking this. Can I ask? Yeah. Why that house? You're married, right? Yeah, that's a bit hard to say. I had been telling Logan about everything I had been through. Logan was known for being a good listener in college. Before I knew it, I had told him everything. Sorry, I got carried away and said some weird things. It's not weird at all. That's just terrible. So you need that house for your revenge, right? I guess so. Then let me help you. I'm in charge of that house, and I might be able to get you a better deal. Really? Are you sure? Of course. At that moment, I regretted why I hadn't married someone like him. Thus, I began taking steps to drag them down to hell. What are you doing? What's this all of a sudden? It's not what? You're useless. My mother-in-law said this and then threw my phone that was in front of me. It seemed to be thrown with perfect control, hitting me on the forehead, and I crouched down. What did I do to deserve this? I glared back at my mother-in-law. She didn't like that and kicked me even harder. You're such an impudent woman. What's your problem with me? Then my sister-in-law arrived. Don't you get it? You should be grateful just to be allowed to stay in this house. Get up now. She then pulled my hair and forced me to stand. Stop it, please. Don't make a scene. Come on, help me out here. Leave it to me. I couldn't understand why this was happening. Get started on dinner now. And if it's bad again, you'll hear from me. Since coming to my in-laws, I've been doing all the household chores alone. No one's going to help you. That's right. You're all alone in this world. They both started laughing in a creepy way. I'm home. What are you doing? You came back at just the right time. I was just teaching this woman her place in this house. Why don't you say something too? I'm tired. Ethan didn't offer any help or even a word, he just hurried off to his room. This is the harsh reality of my home. Even Ethan, who I hoped would be my ally, was just like this. I finally made it here. After that, Logan and I collaborated, and I decided to buy that house. Moreover, I deliberately made it obvious by placing documents related to the property in easily noticeable positions. And when I went to check the house after the purchase. I can't believe you bought such a nice house without us knowing. You knew about it. Of course, I know what you're capable of. I pretended to be surprised. Still, to find such a nice house within 10 minutes from the station. Yeah, it looks like this will be our house from now on. Huh? What are you surprised about? What's mine is also my husband's. Well, I might even let you live with us. Then maybe you should sleep outside. Sister, that's like treating her like a dog. Oh? I always thought of her as a talking dog. What's so funny about that? What if I refuse? That won't happen, but well, it would mean divorce, I suppose. All right. That's a smart decision. But I won't just quietly comply. Right. This house is in your name, isn't it? Yes, but... I'll change the ownership to me. No complaints allowed. I've been thinking of doing that since we decided to live together. But I have a condition too. A condition? Yes. Since we're going to live here, you don't need your old family home anymore, do you? I want it transferred to my name. Oh, that's fine. Ethan asked for agreement from my mother-in-law. Since that old house is just that old, it's fine. Really? Okay. Because we have this house now. That's true. These three don't understand anything. This is all part of my plan. So, I'll give you the keys on moving day. Yeah, please do. I can't wait to live here. Right. In the meantime, we changed the ownership of each other's homes. My plan is now coming to a head. And a month later, the moving day arrived. I had handed the keys over to my husband. What is this supposed to mean? A frantic call came from my mother-in-law. What's the matter? Why are you so panicked? You tricked us. Finally realized, huh? It's too late. But you were the ones who said you wanted to live in that house. Huh? How are we supposed to live in this house? That's for you to figure out. Don't joke with me. That's your home now. You did this on purpose, didn't you? Well, maybe. Anyway, good luck. I hung up the phone and headed somewhere. This operation couldn't have been done by me alone. And there's still some finishing to do. I immediately went to meet Logan to report that it had gone smoothly. So it was successful, huh? It was all thanks to your advice, Logan. It's nothing. I had asked Logan for something crucial. That was to put the family home up for sale. I wanted to truly leave them without a place to return to. and he proceeded with the procedures right away. Later, when I came to the family home to move out, I knew you'd come. The three of them had shown up. Why is this house for sale? Well, it's mine now, so I can do whatever I want, right? What even is that house? How was it? It's a nice house, isn't it? Huh? What's nice about that sham of a house? That's right. The house I bought looked nice from the outside, but was a mess inside and not immediately livable. And that house is creepy. I didn't miss that comment. Exactly, that house had a family murder-suicide a little while ago. It's quite famous in that neighborhood. That's why. The neighbors were looking at me weird on moving day. It might be cursed. Don't mess with me. Ethan then threatened me with his fist. If you do that, it's straight to the police. Well, it looks like that's where you're going now. Huh? I pulled out my phone and played a recording. It was a recording of Ethan, my mother-in-law, and my sister-in-law continuously harassing me. I had decided to gather evidence ever since I planned to buy that house. And here it was. This is undeniable proof, right? What are you going to do with it? I'm thinking of taking this to the police. And you told me it would be better if we split, right? That's... So, I'll grant you that wish, Ethan. You're happy now, right? Wait a minute. If you do that, you might get arrested. But that's what you deserve. Also, since you can't live here, please disappear quickly. I left the three of them standing there, stunned, and walked away. Later, this incident quickly spread to my ex-husband's company. Well, after everything they did, it was to be expected. The facts about the affairs and the family's mistreatment of the bride were almost all exposed. But the impact wasn't just that. Maybe there will be a claim for damages. Word got out to the clients who value trust above all, and it seems they terminated their contracts. Keeping my ex-husband employed was now just a liability. Eventually, he was forced to resign. And with no severance pay. Furthermore, he struggled to find new employment, and the family relations were at their worst. He showed up in front of me about 6 months after the divorce. What are you doing here? It was right after he left the company. The man standing before me was my ex-husband. He had been average built half a year ago, but now was gaunt to the point of being unrecognizable. Just one look, and it was clear he had been through a lot. Well, he should be grateful that's all that happened. After the divorce, I had demanded a decent alimony from him. Of course, from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law too. When I consulted the police, they proposed a settlement, which I accepted. This must be their toughest time. How are your mother and sister? They're managing somehow. They're both always at home. Always? Does that mean they're not working? Yeah. I wonder how deep their laziness goes. I was so appalled I was at a loss for words. They always say they want to return to their old lives. I couldn't help but interject when I heard that. You're not working, so it's impossible. What about you? No, I've been really busy. From his response, I realized. My ex-husband was not working either. They really were terrible people. It was definitely right to divorce. I expected my ex-husband to retort, but he didn't. Instead, he apologized. I've really caused you a lot of trouble. I'm sorry. What do you mean by that? I was wrong. I should have ignored my mother and sister and stood by your side. And you think I would forgive you for that? Please! I'm thinking of cutting ties with those two. That should give you peace of mind, right? So, let's live together again, okay? A heavy sigh escaped me. Unfortunately, I've got someone 100 times better than you now. So there's absolutely no way we could get back together. Even if I were single, I'd still refuse. My ex-husband began to plead more desperately. Such performances meant to evoke sympathy no longer worked on me. Honestly, I felt like kicking him away right then. It's embarrassing to see you like this. You look foolish. You've changed a lot. Nothing has changed. Maybe you just had too many illusions? Where did I go wrong? Well, marrying you was the initial mistake. But don't worry, you still have your family. With those words, I left him there and walked away. I went home, and never again did he contact me. Later, an opportunity arose to learn about the situation of my ex-husband and his family. It came through a report from a friend. That's what happened? I just happened to see it, but it was a mess. That bad? Yeah. According to my friend, they were struggling greatly. It was no surprise. The three jobless individuals were living as if each day was a battle for survival. Eventually, that house had to be sold, but due to its bad reputation, it fetched next to nothing. Living in a cramped room, they had no private space. As a result, fights increased, becoming so frequent that they became well known in the neighborhood. Yeah, just the other day, I saw a police car stopped by their place. What could they possibly have done? I could vividly imagine my mother-in-law and sister-in-law yelling at each other. I had no desire to meet them, but I was somewhat curious to see how they were living in their hell. It'd be interesting if they were heading for utter ruin. On the other hand, my life now was like heaven compared to before. My first marriage had been a terrible experience. Even now, the hardships of that time sometimes haunt my dreams, but I'm not pessimistic. That's because the person beside me truly loves and supports me. Shall we go? Yeah. You look really happy. Did something good happen? Well, yeah. Just having Logan by my side is enough for me. In my previous marriage, I might have demanded too much. Perhaps that was a reason for its failure. So this time, I'm making sure not to make the same mistakes. I'm fully committed to protecting my current place. Today's weather is clear. It's a perfect day to reaffirm my resolution. I'm pregnant with Michael's child. It'll be born soon. You should break up with Michael. Shocked by my sister's words, who suddenly showed up at my house, I was more dismayed than surprised. To think she would boast about having an affair with her sister's husband and being pregnant. It was unexpectedly shameless. It's because you never got pregnant that this happened. It's your own fault. You're a defective product because of your infertility. My sister and Michael looked down on me and laughed. Their closeness, as if flaunting it, filled me with disgust. The sisters are too different. I was so hurt that I couldn't even speak. Michael's gaze was surprisingly cold. I'm getting remarried, so let's divorce. If that's what you want, fine. I'll let you go. But is it really Michael's child? After all, my sister and Michael left the house, and I was left alone. But being alone allows me to think deeply. Actually, about that. Things are getting interesting. Just watch. I will make sure they get what they deserve for what they did to me. My name is Kimberly. I married Michael, the managing director and the CEO's son, when I was 30. My in-laws, who had been very kind to me since I was just an employee, introduced us, and that led to our marriage. My parents also blessed our marriage, and relations with people around us were good. Even after getting married, we worked at the same place, and at first, everything seemed to go well. I never imagined I would be pushed into such misery later. Michael, who was initially kind, changed drastically after our marriage. Hey Michael, if you're going to be late, at least let me know in advance. Huh? Why should I have to report my schedule to you? I'll do what I want. But I have to prepare dinner. Shut up. Don't order me around. You're the one doing all this on your own. He'd complain if dinner wasn't ready when he wanted it, though. Watching Michael storm out, I sighed. Right after we married, Michael began spending money recklessly. He dumped his work on his subordinates and frolicked around. Calling it business, he roamed the nightlife almost every morning. I thought he had settled down after becoming a professional, but his true colors showed. What do you mean? I was at the same university as him, and back then, he was famously extravagant. He was out every day and seemed to have multiple girlfriends at the same time. It was so bad that the CEO got angry. I heard he almost cut ties. After that, he seemed to calm down and get serious. I was too shocked to speak. I could clearly hear my voice trembling as I forced it out. I had no idea. A coworker next to me nodded repeatedly. When he joined the company, he was really serious. Everyone thought the CEO's scolding had woken him up. That's probably why he was made the managing director. That's what I thought. Kimberly, you're well regarded in the company. Maybe he let his guard down because you were introduced as his bride? He probably convinced himself that he could take over the company this way. Indeed, Michael's reputation was visibly deteriorating. There were even voices saying that Michael should be fired and the current executive director should be promoted to managing director. That bastard, he underestimated me again. He should know his place. Michael always complains about his boss when he's at home. As he is my immediate supervisor, I felt cornered. Why do you, my wife, have to work under him? Well, I'm in charge of accounting. He seemed displeased with my rebuttal as I spoke up, despite being scared by his yelling. Michael banged on the wall, making a loud noise. Shut up. Don't talk back. Get him fired. It's harassment or something. You work with him. You can figure something out. It's impossible. He's a decent person. Don't take his side. You're my wife. Michael only complains without making any effort. Moreover, he has never contributed money to our household since we got married. I manage all our finances with my salary. I'm managing somehow because I work full-time, but I'm anxious about the future. Hey, can you at least contribute some money to the house? For groceries or utility bills. Huh? Why should I give you my money? You work too, right? That's no way to speak. Aren't we a couple? At least help me with the living expenses. For the first time, I stood my ground against Michael's anger. I was the one paying for everything, groceries and utilities, and life was truly difficult. It's impossible for me to support a lifestyle meant for two on my own. Yet Michael didn't understand. He probably didn't even try to. To him, I'm just a trophy, something to have for the sake of taking over the company. What? Did you marry me for my money after all? That's not it at all. It's hard to maintain the lifestyle you want with just my salary. That's why I'm asking for cooperation. Shut up. This is why I hate poor people. It makes me sick. Don't show your face for a while. It's impossible to discuss anything. But I hesitate to consult my in-laws. They are good people, and discussing such matters would only worry them, and I don't want to cause any strain due to Michael. They are as important to me as my own parents. If my in-laws were to scold Michael, he would take it out on me. I didn't want that. The house we live in was built by my in-laws. They provided the money, and left everything about the house to Michael and me. Back then, when he was still reasonable, it was fun to make decisions about the house together, but now it feels like a distant memory. But to repay my in-laws for their kindness, I'll try a little harder. I renewed my resolve and headed to work. As I remembered my in-laws' kindness, I endured Michael for 3 more years. Michael's behavior only worsened, and now he's notoriously a prodigal son. Moreover, he boasts about not contributing money to the household at social drinking events. Because of this, people say I am meek and can't control my husband, or they pity me as a poor woman stuck with a useless man. I feel confined even when shopping, feeling like someone might be talking about me. Even among the employees, there are those who look down on me for not being able to discipline Michael. Why do you let your husband do whatever he wants? If I had someone like that in the same house, I couldn't stand it. Are you afraid of getting divorced? Look, if you keep quiet, you might become the CEO's wife. If that playboy becomes CEO, then his wife is practically the CEO. That would be a takeover. She looks quiet, but she's scary. Complaining to Michael only results in him yelling, and if such a person becomes CEO, the employees will surely be lost, so they direct their complaints and anxieties towards me. Kimberly, you look pale. Are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. If you have any troubles, feel free to talk to me. Thank you very much. My in-laws also subtly care for me, but I still haven't been able to discuss MILl with them. Delaying the conversation because I thought I could still endure it has led to a feeling of guilt, as if I'm hiding something. Unable to express my situation well, I became reticent, and it seems that a distance has formed between me and my in-laws. We treat each other as if handling a bruise, and it's heartbreaking. They are truly good people, but I'm the reason they look so troubled. Always playing the good girl. Do you really want to be the CEO's wife that badly, to marry such a husband? That prodigal son said you're a money grubber, and he might not be entirely wrong. After all, they even built a house for you. My workplace has become an uncomfortable place. Going to work has started to feel increasingly depressing. The only solace is that my direct supervisor, the executive director Tyler, treats me with a very professional attitude. MILl, who unilaterally dislikes him, is surprisingly businesslike even towards me, who feels marginalized. Being distanced from my in-laws and becoming a target of rumors, his detached attitude is a relief. Kimberly, please make a copy of this document. Sure. Trying to please both the executive and the managing director, playing everyone's favorite. Maybe she's thinking it'll be good no matter who becomes CEO. What an ambitious woman. I'm just doing what I need to do. I'm only working, no matter what they say. I'm not in the wrong. No matter how many times I tell myself that, my hands still shake. I heard that after a while, my in-laws told MILl, "We cannot let you take over the company in this state." MILl, red-faced and furious, relayed this to me. It's your fault. You never having kids is why they're saying this. I don't understand how it's come to this. After all, he comes home in the early morning every day. How could it be easy to have a child? Why would it come to that? Your parents just want you to work seriously. You're saying I'm not working? Don't joke. I'm far busier than you and contributing to the company. I earn a much better salary than you. You have no idea about my work. Once it gets to this point, MILl is beyond help. All I can do is wait for him to vent his anger like a tantrum-throwing child. As I shrug and wait for the storm to pass, MILl keeps yelling at me. It's your fault. You're not having kids. A son. Get fertility treatments or whatever, just hurry up and have an heir. That's so. Don't talk back. MILl threw a tantrum again, throwing things around, so I ducked to avoid getting hit. All right. I'll undergo fertility treatment. Will you help? Why should I have to do anything when it's your fault? You're the defective one. Don't mock me. It was scary to see MILl rage, but at the same time, I felt a sense of disgust and exhaustion. Why do I have to endure this treatment? My in-laws meant well by warning him, but it seems to have backfired. But it's unimaginable for a normal person to act this way. If I do as he says, his tantrum will subside for the moment. I gave up everything and complied with MILl's demands. A year into the fertility treatment. And the tests show that my body is normal and capable of pregnancy. When it was suggested that the issue might be with my husband, MILl adamantly refused to get tested. His mood worsens whenever he or things around him are struck, and neither I nor the doctors can speak firmly. Suspected of infertility, MILl told me to see another doctor, but the results were the same no matter the hospital, and MILl only grew more irritable. Could you come to the hospital just once? There might be something I'm not noticing alone. I had been putting up with his bad mood out of fear, but one day I plucked up the courage and asked humbly. Huh? I'm busy. I don't have time to deal with your mess. But without your cooperation, we can't do in vitro fertilization. It seems there's nothing wrong with my eggs. I'd like to move to the next step. I know it takes your time, but could you help just once? It seemed right to say it was for my infertility treatment rather than his tests. He was less likely to get upset. He frowned slightly, but watched me with a glare. You're paying for the treatment, right? Of course. It's my fault. I'll take full responsibility. All right. I guess I'll go then. I was appalled by his ever-arrogant attitude, but I managed to take Michael to the hospital. He brought up money at every turn, and it was hard to tell who really was the money grubber. However, seeing how eagerly I seemed to want Michael's child seemed to improve his mood significantly. He probably enjoys being pampered. No matter how old he gets, he remains childish and immature. Even at the hospital, he reluctantly followed the instructions, then stormed off home against the advice of me and the doctors. I ended up being the only one to listen to the doctor's explanation, feeling completely helpless. Given his behavior, I wasn't too surprised by what followed. Long time no see, Kimberly. Lisa! What are you doing here? One day, my sister Lisa suddenly visited our house. Seeing her proudly smiling with a big belly gave me a bad feeling. Lisa had always been the playful type, and until recently, she had been living carefree at our parents' house without working. However, she stopped visiting home after I married Michael. Our parents were initially worried, assuming she was probably living off some boyfriend again given her track record, but I hadn't expected her to be pregnant. It felt like she was due to give birth soon. I'm pregnant with Michael's child. It will be born soon. Please, divorce Michael for me. It must have been planned. Unusually, Michael was at home and he hugged Lisa's shoulder, sneering at me. Just like Lisa said, I don't need a woman who can't get pregnant forever. I've put up with you just to save face for the parents, but I can't stand it anymore. You're costing a fortune on treatments without getting pregnant? Michael is troubled by that. My sister laughed triumphantly, and Michael looked down on me. Their close and despicable appearance pushed my anger beyond its limits. Really, I've been troubled by you not getting pregnant forever. A defective product due to infertility. How dare they choose such vile words? They must be thinking of nothing but hurting me. They say they don't need a defective product like you anymore. I'm getting remarried, so let's divorce. I was at a loss for words. I knew he was a womanizer, but I never thought he would cheat with my sister. When I introduced Lisa to Michael, she was overly flirtatious, but I hadn't expected it to go this far. Okay. I'll get ready, just give me a moment. Judging that I had given in, both Lisa and Michael seemed pleased. What drives them to this extent? I don't recall ever doing anything to harass or hurt them, but it's surprising to see how much they dislike me to treat me this way. Hurry up, you know. Stress is toxic to the baby. If you had any decent sense, you'd celebrate your sister and husband's new start and pack your bags and leave quickly. It's surprising to hear words about decent sense from Michael. Being lectured on morals and common sense by these people is the ultimate insult. Or better yet, can you just leave now? A useless person who can't have kids doesn't need to be in the house. Go back to your parents. They're sweet on you, even if you're a failure. Hearing Lisa's words made my blood boil. My parents, who supported my diligent studies and encouraged me despite being plain. Yet they did the same for Lisa, worrying and scolding her for her late returns from her nightly escapades until now. I don't think my parents' love was unequal. In fact, I often felt that despite my sister's delinquency and my being somewhat of an honor student, there was no noticeable difference in how we were loved, almost making me feel less loved. What is she talking about? I suppressed the urge to shout back and feigned calm. It will take some time to pack and explain the situation to others. Please wait a little longer. When I pretended to be disheartened, Lisa and Michael were very pleased. Especially Lisa, who, while pretending to be displeased, couldn't hide the smirk on her lips. Her expression twisted as if torturing me was her greatest pleasure. I don't want to see your miserable face. Lisa's insincere falsetto was echoed by Michael. It would be a disaster if Lisa and the baby got sick. We have no choice but to rent a hotel for us today. Get out right now. Got it? After saying what they wanted to, they left the house. The house that my in-laws bought for us. They must have wanted their son to be responsible. And they treasured it. Even my parents were worried about my sister. The two of them just trampled over everyone's feelings. I'll get my revenge, no matter what. If that's what you want to, fine, I'll give you a divorce. I wanted to divorce too, so that in itself should be welcome. But I will never allow those two to be happy. Just watch. I'll show them hell. I made my preparations. I moved out quickly with my stuff packed, but I dragged out the divorce proceedings for various reasons. In the meantime, I actively worked on gathering evidence and rallying support from others. Since Lisa's belly was quite big, she would probably give birth while I was preparing my revenge. It's because they're not planners that things turned out this way. Being unmarried and giving birth must be tough, but it seems they're not really feeling it. They kept nagging me to hurry up and divorce, but there was no urgency in their demands. Truly appalling people. Are you sure it's Michael's child? After all, that man. Wondering about this, I decided to talk to my in-laws. They had already heard from Michael and Lisa, so it was good timing. Everything is ready. Now, all that's left is to show them hell. A month flew by, and I heard that Lisa had given birth. What right do you have to show up here? You're still clinging to Michael, aren't you? When I entered the hospital room, Lisa looked displeased. She must be enjoying saying mean things to me since she was smirking. Michael also glared at me, following Lisa's lead. I don't know what you've told my parents, but we're strangers now, so stay out of it. You got me scolded. That's because of your unreasonable behavior, I think. But it's useless to say anything. Oh no! My sister might be stalking Michael. It's troublesome. I have Lisa now. Truly blissful people. I held back a sigh and tried not to show my emotions. Congratulations on the birth. Lisa and Michael just looked down on me in response. They can only act like this for now. Excuse me. First of all, congratulations on your hard work giving birth. The in-laws entered the hospital room after that, followed by my parents. Sorry for intruding with such a large group. We have something to discuss. It's going to be a bit hectic from here on. Lisa and Michael, convinced of their victory, sneered at me. Dad, Mom. We finally have a grandchild. Isn't that great? Please hold the baby. Lisa was already trying to charm the in-laws in a falsetto. The in-laws looked stern, and in their place, my parents spoke up. Lisa, it seems we've spoiled you too much. We never imagined you'd grow up to treat your own sister like this. We thought we'd always be on your side, but this is too much. You are no longer welcome in our home. You are cutting ties with you. Hearing this, my mother started crying. I told you countless times to be considerate of others, but it was all in vain. Wait, what's going on? Lisa was taken aback by the sudden disownment. I can't believe you would say that to me, someone who just gave birth. I don't want to be part of a family of poor people like you. Michael sided with Lisa. He put his hand on her and glared at my parents. How unreasonable. How can you say such things to a daughter who's tired from giving birth? Lisa, even if they are your parents, that's unforgivable. And then he said proudly to Lisa, I'll protect you, so don't worry. Michael. They were intoxicated with themselves, completely absorbed in their own world. I can't believe my sister, after all the care our real parents have given her, called them poor. The words she threw at them must have shocked my parents more than me, but they seemed prepared, unshaken. Perhaps, unknown to me, there had been conflicts or disputes between my sister and our parents, and they had written her off a long time ago. You're acting like it's none of your business, but you too. I'm not letting you inherit the company, and you're fired as of today. Don't ever show your face again. What? What do you mean? Michael raised his voice in response to my father-in-law's words. My sister turned pale and trembled. Now that the status she gained at the expense of disparaging her own parents was in jeopardy, it's understandable that she would react this way. It was hard for me not to laugh watching the two of them panic. There's no one else to hand over but me. We have a grandchild now. Doesn't that secure the family's future? What era are you living in? My in-laws were exasperated by Michael's argument. Michael looked pitiful, as if he was about to cling to my in-laws. My sister still didn't seem to fully grasp the situation, only glancing back and forth between my in-laws and Michael. I thought you were capable enough to run the company, but even making you managing director was a mistake. I'll leave the company to a reliable employee. What? That's ridiculous. Finally, Michael's temper exploded, and his shouting filled the room. However, both my father-in-law and mother-in-law seemed used to it and didn't even flinch. I've been talking about becoming CEO. You can't just allow that. That's something you decided on your own. We don't know anything about it. Until now, my mother-in-law, who had been quiet next to my father-in-law, confronted Michael with a resolved attitude. You've been talking about becoming CEO and borrowing money, but find a job and pay it back yourself. We can't take care of you anymore. What? Given Michael's history of partying, it's not surprising he has debts. As a managing director, he should have a decent income, but his extravagant and womanizing ways meant he could never cover his expenses. It seems he also bought cars and a condo without my in-laws' knowledge, and who knows how much debt he has racked up. Then my sister finally understood the situation and dropped her flattering demeanor, glaring at Michael. What's going on? This isn't what we agreed on. Why do you think I had this child? But Michael was too busy yelling at my in-laws to pay her any mind. You guys told me to prove the lineage if I have a grandchild. That's why we had the tests done. What was all that for? My sister's face was drained of color. The tests must have been bad news for her. What? I wasn't informed about this. Michael frowned at my sister's shrill voice as if he found her annoying. Just a moment ago, they looked like a happy couple. What are you fussing about? It's my child, so there's no problem. Shut up, I'm busy right now. Actually, about that. At that moment, a doctor my father had called, who was also a friend of my father-in-law and was cooperating with our revenge, walked into the hospital room with a troubled look. Lisa's child is not related to Michael by blood. What? The room fell silent for a moment. My sister gasped, and Michael broke out in a cold sweat. With the doctor's words, their faces turned ashen. This was my moment. I pulled out various photos I had hidden in my bag. What is this? What are those? Dozens of pictures showed her with different men, some depicting a man and woman entering a hotel. While the woman was consistently my sister, the men weren't just Michael. It seemed she had restrained from relationships since her pregnancy, preventing me from gathering evidence. However, my sister's ex-boyfriend, who had been dumped because she was pregnant, had hired a detective to investigate her infidelity. I had compensated him for the investigation results. Your ex-boyfriend, who you dumped because you got pregnant, hired a detective. If you want, I've also gathered testimonies from him and other men you dated. Michael looked at my sister with murderous eyes. He may look like a victim, but he needs to fall into this hell too. And remember when we went to the hospital for the fertility treatment? I have those test results too. What? Tests? I wasn't informed. Preliminary tests are required for in vitro fertilization. It's standard procedure. The doctor tried to stop Michael by explaining this. But he ignored the doctor's words and left on his own. His selfish behavior drove him into this corner, leading to this situation. It was all his own doing. Your sperm motility is very low. You are definitely suffering from male infertility. If you think it's a lie, take a good look at the test results. No, that's a lie. Michael's reaction was more amusing than I had imagined. His face turned pale, and with trembling hands, he snatched the test results I handed him. He widened his eyes, repeatedly reading the content, and sweat broke out all over his body. His lips quivered as if he was about to collapse. The DNA test also showed that the child isn't yours, and the father is probably one of the men in these photos. I told Michael as he was shaken by the fact he was infertile. Then, Michael shoved the test results back at me and yelled at Lisa. "You deceived me! You whore!" But Lisa retorted just as fiercely. "Shut up! It's your fault for being sterile." "No way! It's your fault for being a whore." Michael seemed unwilling to accept the reality and glared at me next. What a mess. "Hey! You're lying, aren't you? Can you believe this piece of paper? You're just harassing me. It's all revenge because you got dumped. The defective one is you." Defective, you say? My in-laws and parents frowned at his words. Whether he realized or cared about the atmosphere around him, the more Michael spoke, the worse he made his own situation. "My test results are normal at any hospital. If you can't believe it, why don't you try getting tested at various hospitals yourself? Like I have time for that. Get real." Finally, my father-in-law raised his voice. "It's you who needs to get real. Have some shame. It's disgraceful. Please, no more shame. It's embarrassing for Kimberly." With those words from my in-laws, Michael flinched. Instead of his yelling, Lisa chimed in. "Your actions have doomed me too. What are you going to do about it?" "Shut up, whore. That's my line. You completely deceived me. Take the kid and disappear." An unbearable argument ensued. Ultimately, it's a relationship tied by money. Their true colors and desires exposed, it was embarrassing even to watch. "You wouldn't have any good qualities if you didn't have money. An old flashy woman talking big." My in-laws and parents held their heads in dismay. I'm at a loss for words. How did they end up this way? I feel sorry for the baby. The child is innocent. I was worried about the child too. With such parents, the future seems uncertain, and it's questionable if the child can even be properly raised. Unconcerned with our worries, my sister looked at us. Apparently, she cared more about herself than her child's future. "You caught a weird man, and now my life is ruined. What are you going to do about it? Take responsibility." Michael grabbed Lisa's shoulder. He looked ready to strike. "What did you say? You! Don't touch me! You sterile man!" I was utterly exasperated. I let out a long sigh, releasing all the pent-up frustration I had been holding back. "Your reckless actions are your own responsibility, not mine. In fact, I wish you would take responsibility for them." "Huh? Don't joke with me. You always look down on me. I've always hated the way you look at me." I believe it was actually my sister who looked down on me for living so earnestly. Maybe my sister had her own reasons towards me and our parents. What a coincidence. "I've also been despised by you continuously, and I've never liked your words or attitude." What kind of way is that to talk? You really are not a nice woman. That's why you're abandoned. That must be what they call a double standard. Their talk is completely nonsensical. Negotiation is a waste of time. To conclude, I've decided that you both will take responsibility. I confronted my sister and Michael with a copy of the demand for damages that I had a lawyer prepare. I'm filing for divorce against Michael. Talking it out with these two would be futile, so I resorted to drastic measures. You will definitely pay up. Considering the years and treatment I endured, it's a small amount, but the two of them exploded in anger. You money grubber! You want money that badly! I just want to show them hell. Money is just a means to that end. From their reactions, it seems this was the most effective. Their disgraceful squabbling was too much, and it seemed our parents could no longer bear it, raising their voices. Considering what Kimberly has been through, this amount is too small. Be thankful that this is all it is. How can someone who cheated with her own sister's husband say anything now? You have no grace. Scolding from blood relatives has no effect on selfish people. Their eyes glittered as if everyone but themselves were the enemy. The sight of them raving like madmen, even if anticipated, was frightening. If you say we're strangers, then stop pretending to be parents. That's right. You have nothing to do with us anymore. If they had shown some remorse here, perhaps the disownment might have been retracted. But foolish people prioritize their trivial pride and desires, oblivious to the consequences. Why did it come to this? Michael and I made eye contact. I had a bad feeling. But Michael acted before I could. He glared at me with murderous intent and lunged. Kimberly! It's all your fault! Ouch! I screamed involuntarily. But the expected impact never came. Tyler! You were here too! Tyler, the executive director who was outside the room, restrained Michael. My father-in-law, looking down at the fuming Michael, seemed sad. We've decided to let Tyler take over the company, so you can peacefully work. Michael had always despised Tyler. He had always feared that his position was being threatened. Now that his fears had materialized, it seemed his mental balance had finally broken. Like a child throwing a tantrum, he began to scream and thrash about. But Tyler, holding him, didn't flinch. I've always thought he was too much to handle, but I never imagined it would come to this. Are you all right? Please take him away quickly. Soon after, security arrived. They took over from Tyler, trying to escort the raging Michael out of the hospital. At this point, Michael finally realized he was in a pinch. He broke away from the security guard and clung to my leg. The tears in his eyes as he looked up at me pathetically were utterly repulsive. I was wrong. Please don't leave me. Don't you have any pride? Tyler spoke up for me, saying what I wanted to say. He then pulled Michael off me and protectively put his arm around my shoulder. It seemed that Michael had come to realize everything in this sequence of events. Fooling around. Ridiculing me. Don't think you're the only one who can have a good life. Whore. With his parting shot, he was led away, and I hoped I would never have to face him again. I can only hope that the trial progresses smoothly. Left alone in the hospital room, my sister saw Tyler holding me and changed color. You're also dating other men, aren't you? I don't know what you are misunderstanding, but she has done nothing unfaithful. I am the one who has fallen for her and am courting her. Embarrassed by his words, I wanted to hide my blushing face and looked down. My in-laws, my parents, and Tyler all watched over me warmly. Afterward, Michael and my sister were cut off from the family, struggling to pay off debts. Michael intended to marry my sister, but after realizing he had no money, she dismissed him and left him. Furthermore, she did not take the child with her, so my parents adopted her and named her Anna. She's a lovely girl. There was no issue with adopting her as it was the plan all along, but seeing my sister abandon her child in the hospital made me realize just how terrible a person she was. She was not fit to take care of a child. While my parents are primarily raising her, I, having returned to my parents' home after separating from Michael, am also helping. I continue to work at my former in-laws' company, maintaining a good relationship with them. My former in-laws also dote on my sister's child as if she were their own granddaughter. Surrounded by love, the child is growing up healthily. I heard that my sister was working in the nightlife, but apparently, she got hooked on a guy and disappeared. Michael, too, chased by debts payments, was deserted by several women who had been eyeing him as the next company CEO. Moreover, the massive debts payments seem endless, and like my sister, he is rumored to be on the verge of disappearing as those lending him money are reaching their limits. Years later, I married Tyler. We have 2 children and are living happily. Come on, today we're going to Grandma's house. Yay! I'm going to play games with my sister. Don't be too spoiled with your sister, okay? Anna, too, has a good relationship with us, and she is adored as a big sister by my children. Kimberly, watch your step. Thanks, love. Tyler has been kind to me for years since our marriage. He says he fell for my true strength and treasures me. With him, I am confident we can overcome anything and will always be happy. This must be a reward from God for surviving through hell. I love you. I love you too. I have finally grasped happiness. A mother-in-law who delights in bullying her daughter-in-law. Right after I announced my pregnancy, she suddenly threw a mug at me. The steam rising from the spilled coffee spoke of its scalding heat. Surprised? The prank was a huge success. She laughed without a shred of remorse, and I felt an anger inside me like never before. If you're gonna play nasty pranks like that, be prepared. My name is Anna. I'm a 29-year-old part-time. I've been married to my husband, Harold, for 4 years, and we haven't been blessed with children yet. We do want them, but such things are gifts, after all. We're starting to think about going to the clinic soon. But for now, I've begun to think about our diet and to make sure we get moderate exercise. The physical aspect is important, but so is the mental. Above all, stress is a big enemy. Though part-time, my job is quite stressful, but considering our finances, quitting isn't an option. Luckily, it's a good place to work with nice people. So, job-related stress is minor and somewhat endearing. But unfortunately, there's something incredibly stressful outside of work. That would be the presence of my mother-in-law. It's common for families to have intense mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts. Our home is no exception. The day we decided to get married and went to say hello, my mother-in-law was already a strong character from the first meeting. "So you're the wicked woman who's stealing my son?" I remember how my pasted-on smile froze at that moment. Glaring up at me, she said, "Look here, just because you're gonna marry Harold doesn't mean you can get cocky. Just so you know, I've known my son longer and better than you ever will." In what world does a mother-in-law compete with a daughter-in-law over how long they've known her son? Sure, you've known him longer, you're his mother, after all. This mom loves her son too much. I was completely taken aback. It's probably better than her hating her son, but being overly doting can be tough. It's like she reluctantly gave up on marrying her son because they're blood-related. I was just thinking this when she actually said it, and I was seriously taken aback. Can I really get along with such a mother-in-law? No way. From the start, my mother-in-law didn't want to get along with me, her daughter-in-law. Because she's like this, naturally, her bullying is quite intense. We don't live together, but she lives nearby and frequently comes to our house. Her unannounced visits are annoying, and since she's a housewife, she comes over whenever she likes, regardless of whether it's a weekday or weekend. Of course, I've never received a heads up from her. She comes over even when she knows my husband and I might be out at work, and if we're not there, the complaints pile up on the answering machine. "Why aren't you home?" And that's not all. When we're not home, she involves the neighbors. She waits for another resident to enter and sneaks in with them. I think it's practically criminal, but she insists she's not in the wrong, saying, "It's your fault for not being home." But even if she gets in, we're not there. What's she gonna do once she's at our door? Turns out, she makes a scene. I've been kicked out by the demon wife. The key won't work, she continues to shout, drawing the neighbors out to see what's up. Then she says, "There's a demon wife in this house. Call the police." Can you believe that? When the lady next door told me, "Your mother-in-law was," I nearly fainted. I was so embarrassed I felt like my face was on fire, and when I went around apologizing to the neighbors, I felt like crying. Despite my husband giving her a stern talking to, she hasn't learned her lesson. Just recently, she used the same tactic to reach our condo door and then shouted, "Has anyone seen where my daughter-in-law has gone?" She's a bit neurotic because she can't have a baby. I was keeping an eye on her to make sure she didn't wander off, but where has she gone? I really wish she would stop. No matter how much my husband or father-in-law say, she doesn't stop the harassment. To be honest, it's not just harassment towards me, it affects my husband too, but she doesn't seem to realize it. It's really infuriating to see her smirk when she sees me troubled. She's been asking my husband for a spare key, but thankfully, he's refusing. It's amazing she thinks she'd get one after all this trouble. she probably thinks if she had the key, there wouldn't be any fuss, but I can easily imagine the disaster that would ensue inside our home. In fact, I've already experienced it. In the beginning of our marriage, when I still underestimated my mother-in-law, I gave in to her demand of "I'm your family, after all," and handed over a spare key. Well, that was a big mistake. When I got back from my part-time job, all my belongings were piled up in front of the entrance. Shocked, I went inside and was even more astonished. The walls were plastered with photos of my mother-in-law and my husband as a child, and picture frames were placed around. The groceries I had stocked up were used without my permission, and my pre-made meals were thrown out, replaced by my mother-in-law's cooking in the fridge. Stunned, my mother-in-law proclaimed, I should be the one cooking for my son, as I'm his mother. Furthermore, she declared, I will sleep in the bedroom with my son. You should sleep in the living room. She even said, there's no place for your belongings in this house. It's for my things. Restoring the belongings she had thrown out was a real hassle. I immediately had my husband take back the spare key. But here's the thing. Unbelievably, she had made a copy of the spare key. When I faced the second redecoration, it caught me off guard and I just crumbled. So I immediately added another lock. Seriously, my mother-in-law's obsession with Harold is just too much. It's gotten to the point where her doting is just creepy. Of course, my husband does scold her. Lectured by her beloved son, she pretends to be remorseful, only to repeat the same behavior. She never learns. It wasn't until he threatened to ban her from our home that she finally quieted down a bit. Really, just a bit. At least she stopped involving the neighbors. But the bullying by her continues. At this point, I guess, it's like her hobby. Is bullying her daughter-in-law her reason for living? No joke. There were times I'd come home from work to find a Tupperware full of her homemade food stuffed into the mailbox. Please don't forcefully cram it in and mess up the mail. Sighing, I'd pull it out to find it filled with food I hate. It was the very thing I'd told her I disliked when she once asked, "What don't you like?" Such a detailed form of harassment. And it's food my husband isn't fond of either. On closer inspection, the Tupperware had labels. This one's for the daughter-in-law. This one's for my sonny boy. His container was packed with his favorite dishes. How much free time does she have to make several dishes just to harass someone? She really should find a hobby other than bullying her daughter-in-law. Just the other day, she left some clothes she'd gone out of her way to buy at a department store. They were the complete opposite of my style, or rather, who would wear such bizarre things? Walking around in such flashy designs would definitely draw attention in many ways. My husband made it clear he wouldn't want to be seen walking with me in that. Yet my mother-in-law left it with a note saying, "Send me a picture of you wearing it." That outfit is now just taking up space in my closet. Of course, I've never worn it. If she really bought it at a department store, I'd like to bring a sales clerk over here. I'd like to ask why they decided to sell such clothes. With all this going on, the stress from my mother-in-law's bullying is unbearable. How am I supposed to even think about having kids in this state of mind? I find myself sighing every day. However, life is strange, isn't it? When all you think about is, I want a baby, it doesn't happen, but when your mind shifts to something like, well, it'd be nice to have one, but first I've got to deal with my mother-in-law. That's when it happens. No way! One day, I found myself shaking as I held a pregnancy test in front of me. There it was, a clear positive result. I rushed out of the bathroom and exclaimed, "It's positive." Whoa, you scared me! Have you not been out in a few days? Thanks for the cliché misunderstanding. But no, it's a positive pregnancy test. Ignoring my husband's typical comment, I thrust the pregnancy test towards him. Huh? Positive? Yes, positive. What? I'm serious. Positive, are we having a baby? Yes. My husband must have been worrying more and more that it wouldn't happen. It took him a moment to grasp what I was saying. Then it finally sunk in. Really? Really? Yes. Thank you, Anna. We did it. We both cried and hugged each other. After we celebrated for a while, we realized that pregnancy is really just the beginning. The early stages require that I shouldn't overexert myself. So, I cut back on my part-time job. As a result, our income decreased, but it's a necessary expense from our savings. I'll work harder, my husband declared, fired up. It's really appreciated. I'll do the shopping and carry the bags. Anna, you don't need to lift anything heavier than a fork. I'll cook too, he announced. It's nice, but a bit over the top. Just so you know, the clothes I'm wearing are already heavier than a fork. After I told him his care was becoming a bit much, he shifted to doing things that I specifically asked for. Thankfully, we successfully confirmed the pregnancy sac and the heartbeat. Hooray! We were overjoyed. As we looked at the photo of the pregnancy sac from the hospital, my husband and I started to discuss what comes next. Yes, here's where the trouble begins. It was like, how do we announce the pregnancy to our parents? My family already has a grandchild from my brother, so it won't be a grandchild fever there. So, we decided to just tell them normally. The problem is on my husband's side. It's always his side, or rather, the problem is my mother-in-law. Normally with a normal mother-in-law, you would just tell her, but his mother is not normal. Still, we can't not tell her, right? Right, we agreed. Both agreed, albeit reluctantly. If it were just my mother-in-law, we might consider keeping it quiet, but my father-in-law is there too. It would be unfair to him not to tell, as it's their first grandchild. So, we decided, albeit reluctantly, to go to my husband's parents' house to announce the pregnancy. We thought about just calling to announce our pregnancy like I did with my family, but since we live close and to avoid any fuss later, we decided to visit his parents' house over the weekend. Right as we opened the front door, my mother-in-law exclaimed, "Oh, Harold. What a surprise, come in," and she pulled him inside. Of course, I was left alone, standing at the entrance. As I hesitated about whether it was okay to just walk in, Harold quickly came back and said, "Sorry, Anna, my mom's grip is like a wrestler's." I couldn't resist. "Come in." Following him, my father-in-law came out and greeted me with an apologetic look. "I'm sorry you always have to deal with this, Anna. She's really good at sneaking around me." It seems he is quite overwhelmed by her too. As Harold and I sat on a two-seater sofa in the living room, my mother-in-law wedged herself between us. "Hey, this sofa is for two people. It's painful, don't push." I had to stand up quickly, and Harold angrily said, "What are you doing, Mom?" Then she replied unabashedly, "Well, it's been so long since my son came home. I want to sit next to you." "Come on, Mom." "Hey, Mirabelle." Before Harold could say anything, my father-in-law spoke up in a stern voice. "But move over." "Okay." He didn't yell, but his presence was commanding enough that even my mother-in-law reluctantly moved. They sat across from us. And finally, Harold said, "We're having a baby," which was the real reason for our visit today. "Congratulations!" Hearing this, my father-in-law's eyes widened before he smiled happily and offered his congratulations. He's usually so expressionless and quiet, so seeing him genuinely happy made me feel happy too. I wonder about my mother-in-law, though. She might end up ecstatically claiming, "I'll raise my grandchild." Harold seemed to think so too. We both braced for her reaction. But contrary to our expectations, she kept her head down and didn't move. I thought she'd lift her head with a sparkling face saying, "I'll take care of my grandchild." This was an unexpected reaction, and as we watched, she slowly raised her head. "What?" Tears were streaming down her face. But it was clear these weren't tears of joy. Because she was glaring at me with a fierce expression. "I won't forgive this." "What?" What did my mother-in-law just say? As I tilted my head in confusion, she shouted louder, "I won't forgive this." "She's pregnant? Harold's child? This woman? She took my son from me, and now a baby too." I won't forgive this, never. Harold is mine, and if he has a child, it just means more enemies for me. I've been trying to get her out of the house. Why won't she leave? Why won't she divorce Harold? Why a child? Mirabel. While glaring at me with a resentful face, my mother-in-law's mouth moved frantically. If my father-in-law hadn't stopped her, she surely would have continued. Startled by her name being called, she snapped out of it. But until then, I was truly frightened by the demonic look she had given me. It was the first time I felt genuine fear towards her, as if she were possessed by something. Oh, I'm sorry. She apologized hastily. But despite her apology now, my fear didn't subside. I was thinking about how I just wanted to leave when she said, "I'll go make some coffee," and headed to the kitchen. After she left, my father-in-law deeply bowed and said, "I'm truly sorry, both of you. Dad, Mom's behavior, it's seriously not right." Yes, I think so too. Childcare was her life, after all. I'm also to blame. I wanted her to be a housewife, but that effectively trapped her in a small world. My father-in-law said sadly. What should have been a joyous announcement had somehow turned the atmosphere sour. "Just going to head home now," my husband said as my mother-in-law returned with the coffee. "Oh, I've prepared some nice coffee. At least have some before you leave." My husband looked at me troubled. "It's just coffee," I said, and he apologized with a sorry look. Honestly, my straightforward feeling was anger. Why do we have to feel so unpleasant about something that should be joyous? It's all her fault, isn't it? Thinking about it made me genuinely upset. This definitely wasn't morning sickness. However, contrary to my anger, my mother-in-law now sported a calm, smiling face, as if her earlier behavior was a lie. "I'm really sorry, Anna. I said some strange things out of shock." It was my father-in-law who responded to that. "Exactly. What are you thinking?" "Right, I'm sorry. Come to think of it, an apology from my mother-in-law might be a first. She tends to be overbearing, but with her husband by her side, she might actually behave more normally." With that thought, I glanced at her hands. The steam rising heavily spoke of coffee's heat. "That's right, you're married, and it's perfectly normal to be blessed with a child." "That's right, Mom. I need to behave properly too." "That's right, Mirabel. I'm gonna be a grandfather, and you're gonna be a grandmother." She smiled serenely, as if a spell had been lifted from her. Relieved, my husband and father-in-law began to talk. This might be the first time we've had such a peaceful moment with my mother-in-law around. Could it be possible that from now on, things will be calm? Maybe her outbursts are a thing of the past. I thought so. "Be careful, it's hot." She handed a mug to her husband. "Don't burn yourself." She passed one to my husband. I was absent-mindedly watching her hands. It was just then. "Here, Anna, take this too. Make sure you catch it." It was the moment I responded with a puzzled huh to her words. I saw her face, joyously brandishing a mug at me. Then, the mug came flying towards me. It was filled with scalding hot coffee. "What? Anna, watch out!" Frozen by the sudden event, I couldn't move. I could hear my husband's voice. And suddenly my view was obscured by his back. A splashing sound followed by the noise of the mug hitting the floor and breaking. Even as I heard this, I was still unable to move. I snapped back to reality when I heard my husband's voice saying, "Ouch," near my ear. "Honey, so hot. Are you all right?" "Yeah, I'm okay. I managed to shield it with my clothes, so it didn't hit me directly." "But still." I glanced at the floor where steam was still rising from the spilled coffee. The thought of how hot the coffee was and what could have happened if it had hit my face directly sent shivers down my spine. "What did you do?" I shouted, looking at her with accusatory eyes, but she seemed just as stunned by the unexpected incident. "Mirabel." My father-in-law approached her, his face red with anger. At that moment, as if waking up from a trance, my mother-in-law exclaimed, "Oh my God," and rushed to the fridge to grab some ice. "No need, just cool it with water." My husband mentioned that it was only over his clothes, but he must have still felt the heat. He rolled up his sleeve and went to the sink to run cold water over his arm. As I heard the sound of water running and my husband cooling his arm, I glared fiercely at my mother-in-law. "What were you thinking?" What do you mean?" "My hand just slipped a bit." "You were aiming right at my face, weren't you?" "What if it had hit me?" "It's fine since nothing happened." "That's not okay. My husband could have been burned." "It's your fault for not catching it properly." "What?" I was stunned by her response. She initially seemed remorseful, but then she became defiant. "What? It was just a little prank, wasn't it? Making such a big fuss over something so small is crazy." "A prank?" I was dumbfounded and lost for words. To my astonishment, she smirked and said, "Didn't I tell you, it just slipped." "Ahaha, gotcha, did I scare you?" "The prank was a huge success." She even laughed. It really felt like everything went dark before my eyes, a saying that I realized was true in moments like this. My vision wasn't just obscured, it was overwhelmed by rage, a fiery red that seemed to blaze before me. How could someone go this far over mother-in-law antics? And to laugh about it, claiming it was a slip of the hand or a mere accident, even when her own son could have been severely burned. Unbelievable. "Mirabelle, what are you doing?" "What's the big deal?" I was just trying to lighten the mood because everyone seemed so tense. It was just a little prank. If Harold hadn't stepped in, it would have missed and hit the floor. "She's pregnant, for heaven's sake." "So what? Why is she acting all high and mighty just because she's pregnant?" Faced with her words, I realized that talking to her was pointless, and I walked away from the scene. When I went to check on my husband, he seemed to have avoided a burn, adjusting his sleeve. But he was gripping his phone, seemingly making a call. "Are you okay?" I worried he might have called an ambulance because he was seriously injured. As I approached, filled with anxiety, he smiled reassuringly to signal that he was okay. "No, sorry, but I need it urgently." My husband said so before hanging up the phone. "Did you call an ambulance?" "No, I'm fine, really." "Not an ambulance, but I called someone else." "Someone else?" In front of me, my husband smiled reassuringly as if to say everything was okay. And behind, my in-laws were arguing fiercely, much like a couple in the midst of a heated marital spat. "I can't take this anymore." "What the hell are you thinking?" "What are you thinking?" "That woman is a demon wife who stole our son." "Demon wife?" "That's you. Or rather, a demon mother in your case. Either way, what you did is unforgivable. What she did is even more unforgivable." Oh, what a mess. I was unsure of what to do next, but I certainly had no intention of siding with my mother-in-law. Despite everything turning out okay this time, it was a dangerous situation not just for my husband but for me as well. As I gently placed my hand on my stomach, my husband peered at me worriedly and asked, "Are you okay?" I responded with a reassuring smile to let him know that I was fine. However, continuing any interaction with my mother-in-law might be too risky, given the stress it could cause, both mentally and physically. It might be best to cut ties until the baby is born. It was just then that I thought about this. The doorbell rang. We couldn't tell who was at the door. Seizing the moment to escape my father-in-law's imposing presence, my mother-in-law quickly declared, "Oh, someone's here," and scurried off. She ignored his protest. "Hey, we're not done talking." "Hello, who is it?" she asked, and the sound of the door opening followed. Immediately after, a surprised cry from her echoed, "What?" Wondering what was happening, my husband suggested, "Let's go see," and I decided to follow him. Together with my husband and father-in-law, I approached the entrance, and we all expressed our surprise. "What? Police? Why?" To my surprise, I saw a stern-faced police officer standing at the door. Nervously, my mother-in-law stammered, "May I help you?" The officer replied, "We received a report." "May we speak with you?" "A report?" Her face turned pale. She seemed utterly shocked as the officer continued, "We have a report of an assault." "Is that true?" Her face turned white as a ghost. "What are you talking about? Admit your guilt, Mom." "I haven't done anything." "Well, we can use my burn as evidence then." "What?" Astonished, she stared at my husband. He extended his arm, where the coffee had splashed, displaying it in front of her. I was momentarily worried, remembering his earlier assurance that he was fine. Was he lying? But looking at his determined profile, I understood. I see. This is an act. Indeed, as his wife, I could discern when he was pretending. Perhaps due to her panic, my mother-in-law couldn't see through the act. Especially with the police officer right there, who could blame her for not staying calm? The officer narrowed his eyes with my husband's words. "A burn? How did that happen?" My mother threw a mug of boiling coffee at me. At that moment, she cried out, "No, that's a lie." "It's not a lie. The broken mug is still scattered in the living room. Looks like this is a case for arrest then. So, I'm arresting you." With that, the police officer surprisingly pulled out handcuffs. Is an arrest that simple? I wasn't the only one shocked. My mother-in-law looked even more astonished and confronted my husband with a demonic expression. "Harold, you're betraying your own mother. After all I've done for you. You're a curse on your parents." My mother-in-law, driven insane by the belief that her beloved son had betrayed her. But he retorted, "You were the first one to betray, Mom." She fell silent, unable to argue. "Why can't you be happy that I've found a woman I love more than anyone else? Why can't you be happy we're having a child? Why do you insist I become a man who would silently watch his beloved wife get hurt?" She couldn't respond to her son's words. "I cared about you, Mom. I hated the harassment towards Anna and wanted it to stop. I've even been tough on you before, believing it all stemmed from your love for me, but I can't forgive you anymore. Harold, if you're gonna hurt my family, my wife and baby, then I'm cutting ties with you." "What?" My mother-in-law, who had already gone pale, turned even whiter upon hearing her son's declaration to cut ties. Her eyes were wide and bloodshot, and her lips trembled uncontrollably. "You're joking, Harold, right? Cutting ties, you can't be serious." "It's no joke. I'll never see you again, and neither will your grandchild." "That's too much." "Who's really being too much here? You should be happy. You won't have to see the daughter-in-law you hate or the grandchild you tried to harm. You won't have to see a son who values his family." "No, I can't stand that. Not that." She cried out and broke down in tears, but his decision was firm. Looking down coldly, his eyes showed no trace of filial affection. She slowly retreated further into the house. "Wait, what about the arrest?" Turning back, I saw the officer was shaking hands firmly with my husband. "Thanks, Kevin. Sorry for the trouble. Don't mention it. Just treat me to a drink next time." "Of course. See you around then." After that conversation with my husband, the police officer, Kevin, left. "What?" Stunned, I looked at my husband, who returned my gaze with a mischievous, impish grin. He's actually an old classmate from junior high school named Kevin. Mom never knew who I hung out with back then. "Kevin is a cop?" "No, he's just a regular office worker who's into cosplay." "Cosplay?" "Cosplay, that's where people dress up as characters from comics, right?" I knew he had a police cosplay set because he'd shown me a picture before. Once you take a good look, you can tell it's nothing like a real police officer's uniform, though. Now that he mentioned it, I remembered. He was wearing a jacket to obscure it, but the color and design were different from a real police uniform I'm familiar with. He's still single and lives at his parents' home, so I thought he might be available. I just asked him if he could help out, and he came right over. It's good to have friends you can count on, With that, my husband laughed heartily as if he had successfully pulled off a prank. Mom said it was just a prank, so this was a prank back, a huge success. I wasn't sure if she could hear us from the back room where she hadn't emerged. More than the truth about the fake cop, the sincere declaration to cut ties from her son had deeply affected her. After that, I never met her again. Well, technically, she's my ex-mother-in-law now. Even my father-in-law reached his limit with her overbearing behavior and they divorced. She got some of the property, so she started living alone, but she was in a daze, having lost her son, her purpose in life. My husband frequently receives voicemails like, "Please forgive me. I beg you, forgive me." But he finds them creepy and has blocked her number. He's serious about never seeing her again. Though he acknowledges the debt of being raised by her, whether he will never meet her again in his life is uncertain. What's clear is that she will likely never meet me or our child. Recently, her house has become known as a hoarding house, but that's none of my business. I think to myself, she might as well be buried under it. Maybe I am a bit of a demon wife. Months later, a beautiful baby was born to us. Our baby is the apple of my eye. However, I still can't understand an obsession like my former mother-in-law's. Raising a child is tough but okay. I have a husband who loves and protects his family. No matter what problems may arise in the future, we'll be okay. Surely, we can be a happy family, always smiling together. Hey, what do you think about this person? Wow, she's super beautiful. Right? I'm thinking of divorcing mom and remarrying her. What do you think? Awesome! Totally for it! The three sons, upon seeing the photo of the affair partner, cheered for my and my husband's divorce with excitement. After all I've done to raise them, don't they feel any gratitude? That's manipulative. You chose to have us. The sons began spouting whatever they wanted, like tired of plain cooking and should just hire a maid for laundry and cleaning. It seemed I was no longer needed, not just by my husband but also by my sons. There was no gratitude for me. So I decided to leave this family cleanly. A year after the divorce. When my ex-husband and sons coincidentally saw me again, they were shocked. How can a woman who used to make just 10 cents per piece doing piecework live such a luxurious life? Knowing I was enjoying life post-divorce, my husband and sons regretted how they had treated me and clung to me, but I could never forgive them. My name is Michelle. I was a full-time employee at a company and quit when I got married to Jason, whom I met through a coworker, and became a homemaker as he wanted support. We were blessed with 3 sons. They grew up healthy and each worked hard towards their chosen paths. Jason, who worked at a major company, had high pride and a competitive nature, which now had him serving as the head of the accounting department. It seemed a managerial position was guaranteed for him. My husband dedicated himself to work and the sons to their studies. I was proud of them and supported them. Thinking this, I always kept the house spotless and tried to prepare nutritious meals for everyone. As the children grew, many of my peers stopped being homemakers and returned to work. But with my husband being very busy and hopeless at household chores, and the sons the same, even part-time work would have left no time for taking care of them and the household. So I started doing piecework at home, introduced by an acquaintance. Piecework was flexible and required no commute. Though it was a modest income, I enjoyed working with my hands. Are you still doing that poor-looking piecework? Such a plain woman. On the living room table lay the tools for my piecework. As I was sticking labels on, earning 10 cents per piece today, Jason looked at it and laughed disdainfully. It does take time and doesn't earn much, but it's actually quite fun, you know? Well, it suits you, I guess. Not for me, though. Really, you're doing that measly piecework again? How much do you make per piece? Then my first son appeared and joined in his father's derogatory remarks. Don't say that. It's only 10 cents a piece, but every little bit helps. 10 cents. Can't even buy candy with that. It's just a waste of time. Just leave me alone, you're not being bothered by it. It's still helping with the family finances. My husband always mocked me, but recently my 3 sons also began to show contempt. My sons were teenagers and perhaps found their mother annoying at that sensitive age. I hoped their attitudes would improve over time, but their words and actions often hurt me daily. Dinner's ready, guys! That evening, as usual, I prepared dinner and called the family to the table, where they gathered languidly. And as soon as they saw what was served, they started complaining. Stew again? The vegetables were on sale. They're good, you know. Just veggies don't get us excited, we're growing boys and want to eat more meat. What are you talking about? I've carefully planned the menu for balanced nutrition. Please, no more complaints. I wish we could go out for steak sometimes. Mom's cooking is always so plain, I'm really tired of it. We do go out to eat occasionally, don't be so selfish. If we always went out to eat as you kids want, we'd go bankrupt. Even though I argue back, the kids still seem dissatisfied and grumble as they sit down to eat. Maybe it's because they're teenagers, but these little squabbles are a daily occurrence. The boys are rebellious, and there's another reason for that. It was because of their father, Jason. I also want to eat more luxurious foods sometimes. Can't you serve something else once in a while? Coming home tired from work, I hate meals that look like animal feed with all these vegetables. Don't just complain like that. It's because you're like this that they are getting spoiled and always demanding too. What? Is it my fault now? It's because your cooking is so plain. Don't shift the blame. Always saying the meals are plain, you know, it's hard to balance nutrition within the salary range. I got it. Jason started eating dinner reluctantly while clicking his tongue. It's always like this. Jason has been snapping at me a lot for several years now. And mimicking him, my sons have started to mock me as a matter of course. I had become the emotional punching bag of the family. After such dinners, I stood up to clean the kitchen. The rest of my family was watching TV in the living room. Always complaining about something, but never helping with the chores. Wow, this girl is cute. Why do models have such perfect skin? Well, it's because she's young. Unlike someone. My husband glanced at me while saying this with that mocking smirk. It's not just about being young. Look, this actress is the same age as Mom and she's beautiful. The world is so unfair, someone gets to marry such a beautiful actress. Yeah, unlike our mom. Mom has given up on being a woman. Her cooking and her face are plain. A woman who doesn't wear makeup is just done. Really, we're so unfortunate. Everyone burst into laughter, agreeing. What an awful atmosphere. Lately, I've been feeling this way more often. I have to listen to such conversations almost every day. I did talk back sometimes, but it was 4 against 1, so I never stood a chance. So I endure quietly, but it's impossible not to accumulate stress in such a daily life. Once, Jason was kind. My sons used to say they loved me. But now, tears blurred my eyes as I remembered the kind family we used to be. Now, there was no one in this house on my side. And then, one day, an incident occurred that put an end to the tense family relations. Again, leaving laundry scattered around. Why are you so sloppy? As Jason went to take a bath after coming home from work, I picked up his casually discarded clothes in the changing room. Jason has always been untidy, so it's normal for him to leave clothes scattered, and I always end up cleaning after him. I picked up the crumpled shirt off the floor. Then I noticed something odd. What's this smell? It wasn't the smell of detergent or body odor, but an unpleasant scent. It was the smell of women's perfume. The strong scent was coming from the shirt Jason had just taken off. As I checked the shirt thoroughly, I found lipstick on the collar. Could it be an affair? The clear evidence of contact with a woman made my blood run cold. I confronted Jason as soon as he came out of the bath. I expected him to make excuses, but his reaction was unexpected. You found out. I've been careless because you hadn't noticed until now. What do you mean by all this time? You're really oblivious, aren't you? Even when I say I'm working overtime and come home late, you don't notice a thing. It's been great for cheating. Jason has been claiming to be busy with work, saying he needed to stay late or work on weekends in recent years. But all that was a lie. He'd been meeting his affair partner instead, and he confessed this without any remorse. Our sons are grown up now, and I don't need to be with you anymore. I'm at my limit having to look at your dreary face. Hey, guys, come here, I've got something to talk about. Casually, my husband called out to the sons in their rooms. Wondering what was going on, the three of them came out of their rooms. My husband operated his smartphone and then showed the screen to the boys. What do you guys think of her? Wow, she's super beautiful. Right? I'm thinking of divorcing Mom and marrying her. What do you think? Wait, she's gonna be our new mom? That's awesome, totally for it. The sons took turns grabbing the phone, eagerly looking at the screen. Dad, you absolutely have to remarry. If she was our mom, I'd be a good boy. We won't oppose it. Time for a mom swap. So you guys like her too, huh? Guess what, she's actually a model. Really? No wonder she's so beautiful. She's worlds apart from Mom. Yay! A new mom. I'll start calling her Mommy. You guys, why? I was speechless at my son's outrageous reaction. Normally, wouldn't they say they don't want a divorce? But all four of them praised my husband's new partner as if ignoring my feelings entirely. That's terrible. I've tried my best raising you all. Don't you have any gratitude? That's manipulative. You are the one who chose to have us. Just because you're our mom doesn't mean you can act all high and mighty. Yeah, right. Mom's plain and kind of poor looking compared to her, it's fine if she's not around. My sons started spouting whatever they wanted, like tired of plain cooking and should just hire a maid for laundry and cleaning. There was no trace of gratitude towards me. So I understand how you all feel. I'm not needed in this house, then. You're sensible for once. That's right, please divorce. With the sons on his side, my husband was pleased. Being told such things, I couldn't help but be furious. Fine, I'll leave this house. Be happy with your new mom. By then. Would have done it anyway. You're going to struggle, but try your best. Bye. Everyone let me go without any attempt to stop me, all with smug, unpleasant smiles on their faces. I cut ties with such a family and immediately packed my things and left the house. Afterward, through a lawyer, the paperwork was sent, and my divorce from Jason was finalized swiftly. My sons went with Jason, and the child support was offset against division of property. You, being just a homemaker with only a bit of income from piecework, it's a pity you won't get any money. Jason looked down on me with a triumphant attitude, but I was fine with the divorce happening quickly, even if it meant no money. The emotional scars from being betrayed by the entire family wouldn't heal easily. So, at least, I wanted to start a new life somewhere new and forget about the past. With that thought, I immediately began looking for a new place to live. A year had passed since then. After shopping, I parked my car in the garage as usual. Suddenly, several men appeared before me. Their appearances were shabby and somewhat miserable. I didn't recognize them immediately, but upon a closer look, they were Jason and the three sons, my ex-husband and children. What do you guys want? I was supposed to have completely cut ties with them after the divorce. A bad feeling crept up on me. Mom! Help us! My first son rushed to me, clinging to me with a face about to cry. They began to explain how they had found my house. A few days ago, they happened to see me shopping in town and followed me. Normally, one wouldn't follow a mother they had discarded. But there was a reason they felt compelled to follow me. How can you afford to shop at such high-end stores? My husband interrogated me in a harsh tone, as if he couldn't believe it. Looking at their clothes, it was clear they didn't seem to have any money. On the other hand, I now own a foreign car and live in a famous upscale neighborhood. The store they saw me at was a high-end brand store that ordinary people can't just walk into. Perhaps the former family smelled money when they saw how well I was doing. How can someone who only did sticker-placing piecework live in such a house? You must have a wealthy lover or something. Coming out of nowhere and starting with that. I was appalled by my ex-husband's accusatory tone. Despite the divorce, he seemed to want to belittle me, but as Jason said, I hadn't become wealthy by relying on someone else. Unknown to my family, I actually had a substantial amount of savings. When I worked as a company employee before getting married, I started investing my severance pay. Now it's worth $5 million, allowing me to live without working. If that's the case, there was no need for you to do piecework. When I revealed this, Jason yelled as if outraged. The profit from investments is strictly my personal asset. Besides, I enjoyed doing piecework, and if I had told you and the boys about the money, you would have relied on me and spoiled yourselves. That's why I kept it hidden from you. Indeed, there was no need for me to do piecework. But I started it to fit in with my mom friends who also earned through piecework, and even though it didn't earn much, I enjoyed the meticulous work as a pastime. Sticker placing was really fun, you know? And after we separated, I got really into real estate investment to distract myself from the loneliness. My assets kept increasing, and now I'm having trouble with taxes. In my words, not only Jason but also my sons were utterly astonished. The sons I saw for the first time in a long while looked paler and unhealthier than before. By the way, you all look quite pale. Are you eating properly? Though Jason took them with him, they were still my biological sons. I couldn't help but worry and impulsively asked about their well-being. It's all because of that woman. Our home is a mess. My first son responded bitterly to my question. As it turned out, the woman Jason had intended to remarry had no intention of marrying him from the start. She had approached him only for his money. Jason had fallen for her at a nightclub and tried to attract her attention by treating her to expensive dinners and showering her with high-end brands. However, when he proposed, she flatly rejected him, saying, "I'm not interested in a divorced man with kids." But unable to give her up, Jason hired a detective to locate her home. It turned out she was already married and had a family with another man. I was deceived by that woman. She said she was single. I can't believe she was already married. She tricked me. Jason stomped his feet in frustration, evidently upset about being deceived and exploited. But this man had once discarded me. I couldn't feel a shred of pity for him. Mom, being apart made us realize we need you. Right, the house is dirty without you, and we're sick of ready-made meals. Come back quickly. Help us. My sons began to plead tearfully for me to return home. All right. I sighed, and overwhelmed by their clinginess, I agreed to return home. Then they all joyfully celebrated. However, inwardly, I was completely fed up with their lazy behavior. When I visited my former home, the house was foul-smelling with clothes strewn about and garbage piled up. Since I left this house, there has been no one to do the household chores, and there have been constant complaints from the neighbors. Why doesn't any of the 4 grown men clean? Huh? Housework is women's work. Why should men have to do it? If Mom comes back, everything will go back to how it was. Oh, I'm so glad. I was sick of living in this filthy house. Realizing their selfish reasoning, I understood that I had failed in raising them. Influenced by their father, my sons had grown into men who, despite being completely incapable of caring for themselves, held deeply misogynistic views. If Mom is rich, we can finally say goodbye to poverty. Poverty? You have an income, don't you? Well. According to my sons, Jason had been squandering most of his income on his mistress. There should have been some savings, but that was quickly depleted, and they soon found themselves unable to afford the educational expenses for the 3 boys. My first and second sons had to drop out of college, and the youngest gave up on attending altogether. That's why we're working part-time, but it's still tough to make ends meet with 4 people. Moreover, Jason, in debt up to his neck, had misused his position as an accountant and dipped into company funds. Embezzlement was quickly discovered, but the company, fearing a tarnish to its image, chose not to file a police report and simply fired him. Desperate, Jason struggled daily to find a job, but rumors of his embezzlement spread, making it difficult for him to secure employment. Jason then turned to drinking to soothe his stress and, compounded by his erratic diet, was now suffering from gout. "Please, help us!" The proud Jason was casting aside all shame and pride in begging me for help. Their situation must be dire. "We can't do without Mom. Please, we beg you, come back." My sons followed suit, begging after Jason. All four were bowing down to me. But I felt no inclination to help them. "You reap what you sow. Don't come clinging to me now after all you've done." I looked down at them coldly as I spoke. They might have thought that crying and begging would make me forgive them, but I could not. I could not forget the treatment they had given me. "You said you didn't need a plain wife and mother. Well, I feel the same way. I don't need a husband or sons who ridicule and then discard someone." As I spoke, I took a wallet out of my bag. It contained 10 $100 bills. I placed them on the table. "Consider this severance pay. Never show up in front of me again. Jason, and you boys too, stop relying on others and start taking care of yourselves. It's disgraceful." As I said this, I glared at the four of them in front of me. Then they murmured in disbelief, their heads drooping. I left the living room and closed the door behind me. Immediately, from the living room came shouts of "It's my money," as the four scrambled and fought over the money on the table. It saddened me to see how low they had fallen, but I hoped they would somehow manage to live on their own. Later, I heard that Jason and the boys had sold the house and moved into a small public housing unit. Though Jason had difficulty finding a new job, he eventually got hired by a construction company and now spends his days doing unfamiliar physical labor, taking care of his sons. It seems he has finally developed a sense of fatherhood. Though their life is still tough, he works diligently without complaint. Similarly, the first and second sons are now working and living at a small factory. The youngest, who didn't go to college, is now working part-time to help with the family finances. Though they are still far from escaping poverty, they have become significantly more responsible than before, and knowing this, I felt relieved. Despite the terrible treatment that drove me away, they were still my family at heart. I hope they continue to grow into respectable adults who can take care of themselves. Meanwhile, I've turned one room in my house into a craft studio. Being naturally skilled with my hands, I decided to pursue what I love. Now, many students come to my classes based on word of mouth, and I enjoy delightful times hosting parties at the end of the sessions. Betrayed by my family and left alone, I've now gained a life of freedom where no one can ridicule me. Even though we're apart, I pray for my son's health and happiness, and I plan to live my life the way I want to from now on. Hey Kristen, what in the world happened? Nicholas finally arrived at my hospital room after I had a miscarriage. He glanced my way and muttered, again, clicking his tongue in irritation. Then, upon seeing my brother who had rushed over, he said, "And who is this guy? Don't tell me, you brought another man here?" However, my brother calmly responded, "Hey, there's been a woman with long, blood-soaked curly hair trying to hug you from behind since earlier. Do you know her by any chance?" "What are you talking about?" Nicholas looked at my brother with a startled expression. My brother pointed at Nicholas and continued, "That's the person I'm talking about. She's wearing a big peridot ring on her right ring finger." At that moment, Nicholas started to shiver violently. "Ugh!" He groaned at my brother's words and hurriedly fled the room. "My name is Kristen Rodriguez, I'm 29 years old. I live with my husband Nicholas. And I'm working with no children. We are a couple who eloped. It was 5 years ago. I was just 24, in my second year of employment, and couldn't attend company social gatherings due to my parents' policies. The following year, such gatherings were less frequent due to the times, but back then, it was common for the younger employees to go out and have fun. Our family was strict about attending these gatherings, essentially making them off-limits unless absolutely necessary. I always felt out of place as my colleagues would comment on my poor socializing. During one rare outing that I sneaked away to a mixer, I met my current husband Nicholas. He was a smartly dressed salesperson 6 years older than me. He was introduced as a hard-working individual by other attendees. That day, he was considerate towards me, a newcomer to such gatherings. He helped me catch up with conversations, discreetly stopped others from pressuring me to drink, and even rescued me from an unwelcome after-party, taking me to a taxi. His demeanor back then was very gentlemanly. I was instantly attracted to him. Eventually, we started meeting privately and officially became a couple. 6 months later, he proposed. I was thrilled and immediately said yes. However, my family was not so accommodating. My family has been wealthy for generations, with my father being a senior executive at a major local company. My parents always said they would scrutinize my partner themselves, and they had been strict about relationships throughout my school years. In hindsight, my naivety in judging people was probably clear to my parents and even to my only brother, Andrew. Andrew always used to say to me, "I won't stop you from seeing whoever you like, unlike Dad and the others, but at least let me meet him first." My brother, 10 years older than me, was the most dependable person I knew. Even so, I hesitated to introduce Nicholas to him at that time. I was afraid of Andrew's piercing gaze that seemed to see right through everything. Defying our parents and avoiding Andrew's sad looks, Nicholas and I ended up eloping. I first moved into his condo, and because of that, he started facing harassment from his boss at the company where he worked at the time. My father's company was a client of his. Perhaps we were too carefree back then. We decided to quit our jobs and move to a different state together. We both decided, and then we quit our jobs and moved to another state. And there, we got married. Looking back, that might have been the happiest time for us. Because once we moved, Nicholas's attitude towards me gradually began to change. The condo we moved into was older, cheaper, and smaller than where he had lived before. Once we started living there, Nicholas suddenly told me, "I'm gonna have to work harder than ever before. So you're gonna have to take care of all the household chores." "All right, then I'll just..." I began, but Nicholas cut me off. "But of course, you should keep working full-time like before." He said it as if it were obvious. "Your job is much easier than mine, right? It's only natural you do the housework too." I couldn't respond to Nicholas. Indeed, my earnings were nowhere near his. After moving, Nicholas found another job in sales, and I managed to get re-employed as well. But it was quite different from the cushy job I had when we were financially supported by my family. The salary was lower, and the conditions were far from good. The one difference was that most of my colleagues at the new job were women about a decade older than me, and they took more care of me than those at my previous company. On my way home, I'd do the shopping and had to get used to doing all the household chores properly. In the condo where I first moved in with him, Nicholas had been particular about the interior and never let me touch the cleaning. And he was good at cooking, often having meals ready while I was asleep. However, after we moved, he stopped doing that altogether and left everything to me, harshly criticizing how I did things. "Hey! There's dust accumulating here." "I'm sorry, I didn't notice. It was the same last time. Don't think someone else is always going to take care of it for you." All I could do was nod in agreement. At that time, I thought he was right. Indeed, at my family home, I knew how to cook, clean, and do laundry, but I didn't have to do much of it. Suddenly, I had to do everything, not just for myself but for him too. And if I didn't meet his standards, he would point it out harshly, making it a relentless and exhausting life. Moreover, even when I was tired and wanted to sleep, he would insist on maintaining our marital relations. Even though I told him I was tired, Nicholas just wouldn't listen. Gradually, his dissatisfaction with my complaints seemed to increase, and he started going out at night more frequently. Back then, I always thought this was all my fault. After all, He had been a top salesperson at a good company, and it was all because of me that he had to move out of his route and into a cramped condo. That's why I felt I had to give it my all with him. I truly believed that. And so, I pushed myself harder at work and took housekeeping more seriously, waiting for my often absent husband to come home. Maybe around the second year of our marriage, I got pregnant. But I miscarried before I even realized I was pregnant. Nicholas was surprised by this, called an ambulance immediately, and seemed worried as he stayed by my side for a while. At that moment, I thought Nicholas's affection for me had returned. But perhaps it was just an illusion. When I was discharged from the hospital and went back to work, Nicholas started dipping into our joint savings. I'm not sure when I noticed it. One day, when I went to update our bank book, I saw that the balance was rapidly decreasing. "What have you been spending money on lately?" I asked, timidly showing him the bank account. "That's none of your business, isn't it? Do you have a problem with what I do?" "But this bank book is our joint asset. We might need to suddenly go to the hospital like last time, and that applies to you too." "Yeah, that's true. But that was because you miscarried on your own." When I heard those words, I was momentarily baffled. "What are you saying?" "It was a miscarriage. Our child was lost." "But that was something your body did on its own, wasn't it?" I was at a loss for words. "And we can always have more kids in the future. Stop talking about such depressing things." With that, he went back to his usual routine. One day, I asked myself, no, the child we could have had then couldn't be replaced by anyone else. Even if we had another, it would be a different child. For the first time, I started to feel a sense of distrust towards Nicholas. 2 more years passed, and I was pregnant again. This time, I was determined to protect this life. I scaled back on work and planned to take maternity leave soon. However, I couldn't find the right time to discuss my pregnancy. Because Nicholas was often away on business trips during that period. But I knew that was a lie. When I called his company to ask about his business trip destination, that's when it happened. "A business trip?" Nicholas's boss asked me with a puzzled voice. "He wasn't on a business trip. I heard he took a personal day for a family event back home. Didn't you know?" "Oh, no, I must have remembered wrong. Could you please not tell him I asked? It was a misunderstanding on my part." After hanging up the phone, I felt all my strength drain away. What a thing to say. And now that I knew he wasn't on a business trip, I had to keep up appearances in the little conversation that continued. If it seemed like I knew he had lied to the company, Nicholas could get reprimanded, which I could see happening. If it became apparent that I had lied to the company, it was clear that Nicholas would be reprimanded. If that happened, he would blame me, and there was a real risk he might become angry and resort to violence. I couldn't let that happen. At that time, I was determined to avoid such a situation at all costs. If he did that, it could endanger the life of our second child, who we were fortunate enough to conceive. So, I kept silent. Eventually, when the morning sickness became severe, I finally told Nicholas about the pregnancy. His response was, "Great, another mouth to feed." Despite my growing distrust, I couldn't believe those words. I thought those words were impossible, no way. No, it's not that. I wanted to believe they were impossible. By this time, I already knew that our joint bank account was nearly empty. After our first child was lost, I had been saving up again to cover the costs for the next childbirth from this account. However, perhaps due to growing distrust, I had been slowly saving money in a separate account as well. When I saw that the joint account was almost empty, I resolved to pay with my own funds. Of course, I kept this a secret from Nicholas. Because if he found out, he would immediately demand it and extort the money from me, that much was clear. Surprisingly, the one place I could breathe was at work. As the days went on, more colleagues, especially older women, would say, "You look pale, are you okay, or you seem tired?" Initially, I insisted I was fine and continued working. I've been at this company for over 4 years now, and it doesn't pay much, but I have a good relationship with my colleagues, and it's a comfortable place to work. That's why I've stayed longer than I did at my first job. Honestly, the people around me were happier about this pregnancy than Nicholas was. That's because I had told my female colleagues about my previous miscarriage. Many of the older colleagues had continued working through their younger years and had shifted to part-time work after pregnancy and childbirth. This meant they all understood my situation quite well. So they probably sensed the reason I was enduring severe morning sickness and still working might be because I was afraid of what my husband might do if I didn't. Eventually, the company told me that since systems were in place to handle such situations, I should really take a break if I was struggling. And that's how I was more or less forced to take a leave from work. Get some rest and then come back to work with us, they all said. Moved by their warmth, I teared up. Then, as I was about to leave, exhausted, I collapsed right there. At that time, I lost consciousness instantly and didn't realize it, but it seems I had a severe hemorrhage right there. I later learned that an ambulance was called immediately, and I was taken to the hospital. When I regained consciousness in the hospital room, I was shocked to see how much my belly had flattened. I couldn't understand what had happened right away. But as the reality slowly dawned on me, I couldn't help but bury my face in the pillow and sob quietly. Then I grabbed my phone from the bag within reach and impulsively called home. After a few rings, I realized what I was doing and quickly hung up, but a call came right back. Unable to move due to my condition, all I could do was lower the volume. Ignoring it wasn't an option. I switched to call mode and answered quietly, "Hello? Kristen?" It was Andrew's familiar voice. "I recognized it was your mobile number, but you hung up so quickly. What's going on?" Through tears, I slowly told Andrew on the other end of the phone that I had lost the second child. Andrew just listened in silence. When I calmed down a bit, he spoke slowly. "Sounds like you've had a tough time." Andrew was still the kind person he always was. "Where are you now?" "Sorry, I'm at the hospital. I can't move. I'm on the bed." "Got it. I guess a phone call isn't good then. I'll come right over." "Which hospital are you at? Tell me?" I told him the name of the hospital, which I had learned from a nurse when I woke up. I also realized that I was relatively close by in a neighboring county. "Hold on for a bit. I'll be there soon." Andrew's voice, even after 5 years, still brought me comfort. I wondered how he was doing now. Since we hadn't been in touch, if he had gotten married and had a wife, would I be intruding? These thoughts kept spinning in my head. And a few hours later, Andrew came to my hospital room. It seemed to be a large room, but there was hardly anyone else around. So when Andrew entered, I could barely sit up but managed to cry out to him. "What in the world happened?" Then I began to recount everything that had led up to this moment, sobbing through the story. Especially this pregnancy, which I had been extra careful with because of the previous one. Maybe I let my guard down feeling relieved that I could take a break, or maybe it was just the accumulation of fatigue. In any case, my body might have been signaling its limits. As much as to say that the life that was supposed to be there could no longer stay. "You've been through a lot," Andrew said as he stroked my hair. "By the way, how's he doing? Hasn't he contacted you yet?" I shook my head no. "I heard from the hospital staff that they contacted his office. So I've been waiting, but he hasn't shown up yet." "But you know, I'm kind of, well, actually pretty angry." I started to apologize, but Andrew cut me off. Then my brother said, "No, that's not it. It's that you didn't show him to me first." "Just that." I began to reply when the door to the hospital room opened again. "Hey Kristen, what in the world happened?" It was Nicholas. He glanced at me and muttered, again, clicking his tongue in annoyance. "And who is this? Don't tell me, you brought a man here?" "That's not it. Nicholas, this is my brother," I started to say. "Hey." Andrew stared intently at Nicholas, slightly furrowing his brow. "What? You got something to say to me?" No, Andrew narrowed his eyes and calmly said, "There's a woman with long, blood-soaked curly hair trying to hug you from behind. Do you know her?" "What are you talking about?" Nicholas looked startled at Andrew. Andrew pointed at Nicholas and said, "That's the person. She's wearing a big peridot ring on her right ring finger." Andrew's tone was light, as if he was discussing the weather. At that moment, Nicholas began to tremble violently. Finally, he must have understood what was being said to him. "What are you talking about?" Nicholas asked loudly, without regard for the setting. "Please keep it down. This is a hospital. And I'm just saying what I saw. Oh, the hair's gotten wet and the curls are tighter. She looks a bit younger than Kristen, maybe a college student?" "So, what exactly?" "So, that woman is clinging to your neck just like this, her bright red lips curled into a smile." My brother explained, mimicking the gesture he saw, and Nicholas shuddered in response. "No, what are you saying? That's nonsense." "I'm just telling you what I see. I don't know and don't care who she might be to you." "Ugh." Nicholas groaned at Andrew's words and hurriedly left the room. "What did you see again, Andrew?" "Yeah, well, just like I said. But, let me go make a call outside. Just wait here a moment." Andrew left the room. So that's what Andrew saw. I sighed deeply. The reason I didn't want to introduce Nicholas to my brother before we got married might be due to my brother's nature, perhaps his psychic sensitivity. It was because of that trait of his. It's always been like that. My brother could always find things I'd lost quickly. He would sense if something unpleasant was lingering around me, and he even recognized when I was being isolated at school. He complained about needing sunglasses whenever we went near cemeteries for visits or other reasons. That was normal for me back then. But that very reason made me afraid of what he might say if he saw Nicholas, especially since my entire family was against him. Andrew sees through everything. That's why I might as well say I ran to a place beyond his gaze. Of course, that wasn't the only reason. Eventually, Andrew returned. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Where did you call?" "Well, we can talk about that later." Then, with a serious look, Andrew asked, "Do you really plan to continue with him?" I stayed silent. I just kept gripping the blanket over and over. "It's tough, isn't it? Why don't you come back home?" "But then, what about your place, Andrew?" If I were to go back, it would be to my parents' house. And if Andrew were to inherit the house and if he were married, wouldn't I be an unwelcome sister-in-law? "Yeah, I'm still single." "Really? You're still single?" "Yeah, with this condition, it's tough finding a woman without any hidden aspects. Having the ability to see such things isn't always convenient. When I walked into this room, I could immediately tell you weren't happy. There was a dark cloud around you. It reminded me of the time you were wrongly suspected and avoided by classmates. It's similar to that bad aura surrounding you now. You don't look happy at all." Tears naturally started falling from my eyes again. I nodded heavily, "Yeah. I can't stand it anymore. I'm going to divorce him. I thought maybe if we had a child it would be okay, but even if we did, it would have been pointless with the way things were." "That's right. Probably, the child you were carrying was trying to tell you something, that this situation isn't right. So, come back home soon. I'll take care of things with him." "Take care of things?" As I wiped my tears and tilted my head, Andrew confidently said, "You'll see soon enough." After I was discharged, I went straight back to my parents' house. They seemed very surprised to see me after a long time. They might have wanted to scold me for eloping suddenly, but more than that, they were likely distressed by how thin and worn out I appeared. "You've really been through a lot," my mother said as she hugged me. My father also added, "You've certainly learned a lot about life." Since I needed to rest for a while, I submitted a request for a long-term leave at work. I even hinted that I might resign. Nicholas may have understood the possibility of divorce when he witnessed my second miscarriage firsthand. "Your company seems to have had some good people." Andrew noted as he observed my responses. Yes, that was the only place where I felt at peace. I realized I had never been able to relax at home. Then a few days later, Nicholas showed up at my parents' house. Sorry, but I know Kristen is there. Please let her come out. My mother, who answered him first, firmly said, We cannot let Kristen come out to you. Then she added, However, we do have something to discuss with you. And what might that be? Nicholas took the bait. To get straight to the point, we ask that you divorce Kristen. Is that Kristen's wish? Yes, it is. She currently does not want to see you. While my mother spoke firmly, Nicholas walked into the drawing room as directed. I was listening from the next room. Nicholas sat heavily on the sofa in the drawing room, looking around nervously. Couldn't take the lifestyle of a well-to-do lady, could she? Nicholas began to slander me in front of my mother. It's improper. To just abandon her husband and run back to her parents' house over this. To think she was raised to be such a wife. My mother listened silently until a knock from behind the door prompted a yes in response. Then Andrew appeared. Your turn, Andrew. Yeah, leave the rest to me. At Andrew's entrance, Nicholas let out a small gasp. You? Yeah, haven't seen you since that time at the hospital. Nicholas tried to rise. But he couldn't. As he tried to stand up, Nicholas was forcefully held down by a strong grip on his shoulder. Just as my brother entered the room, security from our family, who had been stationed on the opposite side, near the door Nicholas came through, also made their presence known. Ours is a family of considerable standing, where it's fair to say staff are always on standby. As my mother stepped aside, my brother took a seat in front of Nicholas and began to speak. Well, I have quite a few things I'd like to ask you. What are you talking about? My brother glanced at Nicholas, who was being restrained, and pointed to his side. Yeah, today, there's a woman who's been hugging you from the side. What are you talking about? Do you know this person? Andrew then took out a photo of a woman and placed several copies on the table in front of Nicholas. He gasped again. Why do you have that? Nicholas started but then stopped himself. I don't know this woman. And he pretended as if he didn't know. You don't know her? But you see, whether it's behind or beside you, I can see this lady's arms slowly tightening around your neck. You're totally unaware of it, aren't you? No, what are you even saying to me? Well, let's just say I tend to see things that others don't. But that alone isn't enough to prove you did anything to her. That's why I had our guys look into whether anyone knew this person. He then showed a sketch he had drawn of the woman. Andrew can draw fairly well, which comes in handy when he needs to explain things he sees that are invisible to others. The sketch I saw was of a long-haired, blood-soaked woman with a resentful yet somehow smiling expression, entwined around Nicholas. There's more. When Andrew explained that her hair was wet, I asked what he meant, and he casually mentioned, well, probably this person isn't in this world anymore. To Andrew, seeing such things has been a part of his life since birth, so he discussed it matter-of-factly. As a child, this ability caused him trouble, but now he seems to accept it as just another part of who he is. Andrew continued to Nicholas. I found out that this person has been missing. Isn't that right? I don't know her, I told you. And about this missing person. Andrew ignored Nicholas's protests and continued. I had it checked out. Here's the investigation report. I also saw the report. After seeing the woman in the hospital, Andrew quickly contacted our family lawyer, who then reached out to the police. Of course, we didn't mention that Andrew can see people who are not visible to others. It was more about asking if they had any information because we think we know someone who might fit the description of a current situation. The police involvement might also relate to the influence our family has in this area. It turns out that the woman suddenly disappeared last year, and her family had filed a missing persons report. Incidentally, she lived near the condo we used to live in the neighboring county. I thought maybe Nicholas started seeing her during the days he didn't come home, using the savings we had built up. So maybe that person. I asked Andrew hesitantly when I heard the results of the investigation. Yeah, probably, Andrew replied ambiguously. And probably now, he was thinking of confronting Nicholas about it. From about the year before last, you started spending more and going on trips frequently, didn't you? That's strictly our personal business. It has nothing to do with you. It does matter. My sister saved up that money, and you ended up spending it on that woman, right? Nicholas seemed increasingly irritated by Andrew's calm demeanor. That's a matter between spouses. Well, that includes why we want you to divorce Kristen now. No, that would be inconvenient for me. Nicholas flatly refused. Why? I guess I know, because it would mean one less breadwinner, right? Nicholas clicked his tongue again. After a moment of thought, he said, I might agree to the divorce, but how about you give me something in return, as he made a circle with his fingers. What, are you asking for money to agree to the divorce? Well, yes. You guys have been against it all along, haven't you? Kristen couldn't return home because of that. I didn't mind divorcing, but I felt bad for making her homeless, so I stayed married to her. Hearing this, I almost felt sick. While I had been quietly waiting for him, all this time he thought this way. Basically, you came uninvited. Because of that, I even had to change my job. Ever since, things have only gotten worse. Don't you think I deserve something for all the trouble you've caused? Well, maybe, if you were a decent person. What did you say? Nicholas started to get up, but Andrew restrained him by the shoulders, preventing him from standing. I told you I had it investigated, right? Then Andrew turned towards the door. That's when the police officers, who had been waiting, came into view. What? Why are the police here? Didn't I tell you I had it investigated? You're a bit careless. But maybe it's better if you're caught here. Otherwise, that woman's arm will keep tightening around your neck, along with her hair, and it will end up strangling you. She looks quite furious, you know. What do you mean by that? Andrew looked sideways and nodded several times, then said, Oh, so this peridot ring is a fake. She realized that during a trip and confronted you about it, and you lost your temper. Shut up. Whether it was real or fake, you were satisfied when it happened. Nicholas inadvertently confessed. Caught in his own words, the waiting police officers stepped forward, holding out their badges. We need to ask you about the disappearance and possible unlawful disposal of Shannon Brown. We'll need you to come to the station. The security let go of Nicholas, and he was handed over to the police. I finally felt like I could breathe. Then, I slowly walked into the room. Hey, Kristen! Were you listening all this time? I won't allow a divorce. It doesn't matter what you say, I've already decided. After all, you never took seriously the fact that I lost our child. Both times, even the second miscarriage, Nicholas only glanced briefly at my sunken belly. I truly regret choosing you. Nicholas choked on his words. What was I even doing? I wasted my time, energy, and money on someone like you. Ridiculous. Seemingly surprised by my outspokenness, Nicholas gaped at me. Goodbye. We won't meet again. I'll let the lawyers handle everything from here. Wait, Kristen, hey! Let's go, please. Nicholas still seemed to want to say something, but the police ushered him away. Following the police interrogation, Nicholas confessed. The missing Shannon Brown was a student living nearby. The younger woman, who met Nicholas through a sugar daddy arrangement, apparently wanted to marry him. She had been pressing for a divorce between us. Nicholas probably still saw me as a financial resource. His ultimate goal during this latest incident at my parents' home might have been to extort money by using the divorce as leverage. However, for Nicholas, Shannon Brown was nothing more than a fling, without any further use. During a trip to the mountains, they argued about a fake ring, and when he forcefully pushed her away, she fell and severely hit her head. It might have just been an accident, but what Nicholas did next was not. He dragged Shannon to the edge of a cliff and pushed her off. Because the mountain was outside the usual search areas, Shannon's whereabouts became unknown, complicating the search efforts. Later, based on Nicholas's statements, Shannon was discovered buried under grass near a spring in the mountains. Nicholas was arrested again, and it was certain he would serve a long sentence. Through my lawyer, I managed to get Nicholas to sign the divorce papers, and I was finally free. I'll be going now. Take care. Do your best. Encouraged by my mother's voice, I took my first step towards a new job. For a while, I completely quit the company I had been working at to rest my mind and body, and returned to my parents' home. Once I felt more stable physically and emotionally, I started looking for a new job. The 5 years of living might have toughened me up a bit, given my sheltered upbringing. I'd like to think I've become more resilient than during my initial office life. But for now, I think I'm done with marriage. Especially considering the fact that I've lost 2 pregnancies. For now, I want to stay away from marriage and pregnancy. Andrew is waiting for the shadows around me to clear and for a peaceful atmosphere to return. I don't know what the future holds, but this time, I want to live while taking good care of myself and those